right, I'm going to call the committee to order. It is 12:35 on Thursday, May 2nd. We do not have a quorum yet, but I will announce when we do. So we have a lot of bills on the agenda today. I'm going to appreciate it if testimony could be limited to 2 minutes per person. And just to be fair to everybody, we will have a timer. I have a 2-year-old right now. We're big into timer world. So we'll just have a timer. It'll be your little notification that we're done. And I appreciate everybody abiding by that. And we do have quorum. Great, we have quorum. Senate File 5048 is up first. Senator Hauschild, please come up and present your bill. And Senator Hauschild, you have more than 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the State and Local Government Committee. Today I have Senate File 5048 regarding helium. Minnesota has untapped and unexplored potential for both for geological helium, with one exploration site in Lake County in northern Minnesota reporting a gas pocket containing between 12 and 14% helium. This is one of the largest concentrations of helium found in the world. And with no history of this kind of exploration in the state of Minnesota, we lack the regulatory framework that would support this emergent industry and properly conserve natural resources, protect human health, and develop a fair royalty structure on our state lands. This bill proposes to amend existing statutes and create new laws that would protect the ongoing discovery drilling that is occurring in our region, allow for temporary permits for commercialization helium production, and support the creation of an expedited rulemaking process to facilitate long-term helium exploration. Upon enactment, it would allow the DNR to lease land for these purposes, strengthen the local communities by providing both royalty disbursements and rental payments to local cities, school districts, and counties. It would also temporarily prohibit the commercialization extraction on all lands in Minnesota until interim permitting authority is authorized. The regulatory framework of this bill aims to ensure responsible and sustainable exploration and production while protecting natural resources and minimizing environmental impacts. To be clear, without this legislation, helium exploration and extraction will proceed in Minnesota. It won't happen on state lands, and it will happen without a regulatory structure designed to account for potential issues. This is the case because helium, unlike other hard minerals, is a gas that under the ground, despite being drilled from a private well, has the pooling effect to very, very likely be coming from under state-owned land, county land, as well as school trust land. And so it's really critical that we understand that pooling effect of the helium and have rules and a framework to capture those royalties based on that effect of the gas. In addition, of course, without this legislation, our communities and schools would not benefit from the extraction. And with that, Madam Chair, I have a couple of testifiers as well as an expert from the DNR to answer questions.
Thank you, Senator Hauschild. If Rich, Joe, and Kyle can come forward, or I guess we'll take Rich and Joe first and have a seat at the table. Whichever one of you is set to go first, you may begin. Introduce yourself for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Rich Fateh, and I'm the chair of the Lake County Board of Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. Also, I want to thank Senator Hauschild for authoring this bill, and I've prepared comments for you. First, as I'm sure this committee knows, Lake County is a forested county, rich in public lands and waters. We realize and understand the importance of protecting the environment, as well as the need to make sound decisions surrounding safe gas extraction. This is paramount importance to Lake County. Lake County has been engaged on the issue of gas extraction with Minnesota DNR and the company Pulsar for over a year. Lake County is excited about this prospect of helium source and all the beneficial uses that could help our region and our state. Early in the process, Lake County assumed we would be the only government entity to permit helium extraction. We were prepared to work with the DNR, MPCA, and other state agencies to make sure it was done safely and correctly. At the discovery site, the current helium well is surrounded by 3 sides with tax forfeit mineral and non-registered mineral estates. It is a fair position to state that the mineral owners, where helium and other gases are extracted, should be compensated for that extraction. Yet Lake County is concerned about the potential revenue loss to our schools, local governments, and state as a resource that may be within our respective mineral estates. The rules outlined in Senate File 5048 need to be implemented to make sure the mineral estates, along with the school trust and others, are adequately compensated for any extraction of gas within their boundaries. Failure to move forward with this process would leave those mineral estates vulnerable to the rule of capture. Lake County supports expedited rulemaking. We support the process to bring temporary permit rule language for helium back for action at the next legislative session. Also, leasing would be effective immediately when this legislation were to be implemented, as well as ensuring we have a plan in place for royalties and pooling. In summary, Lake County supports Senate File 5048. We look forward to the implementation of these rules and permitting. We will continue to work with state agencies, stakeholders, and the company or companies for safe and environmentally sound production of these gases.
Thank you so much.
And we ask you to support this bill.
Thank you so much. Next testifier, please introduce yourself for the record. You may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Committee members, my name is Joe Henderson. I'm the Director for the Lands and Minerals Division of the DNR. Thanks for the opportunity to testify today on this helium hydrogen bill. Thank you to Senator Hauschild and others for their work on this bill. You've heard a pretty good summary of why this is important in Lake County. And again, you've heard from folks that, without rules, extraction will continue to occur. It just won't occur on public lands. And that extraction on private lands, due to the rule of capture, would not prohibit the drawing from under those public lands. So that's why this is important for this project, this one project we know of right now. I'd also like to comment on hydrogen. So hydrogen exploration companies have identified drilling targets for geologic hydrogen in Nebraska and Kansas right now, along the geologic formation known as the Mid-Continental Rift. This formation extends northwards into Minnesota from the Iowa border to Lake Superior. The USGS, United States Geological Survey, considers the Mid-Continent Rift to be one of the top 2 prospective regions for geologic hydrogen production in the United States. This bill would also allow exploration for hydrogen and would set up a permitting structure for both helium and hydrogen. So you've heard what this bill will do. A couple key points that I just want to call out again. It would allow the DNR and other agencies to amend existing oil and gas authority to include non-petroleum gases, and it would direct the state agencies to evaluate the need for new rules that would support a regulatory framework for exploration and production of gas and oil resources in the state. Again, upon enactment, it would immediately allow the DNR to lease state-managed lands to prospect for non-petroleum gas, and it would allow royalty disbursements and payments. Funding would be provided to hire staff and consultants who would write rules for leasing, permitting, and associated activities for this emerging industry. One key aspect of this bill is the requirement to use expedited rulemaking and to notice the intent to adopt rules within 24 months of the effective date. Also, a technical advisory committee would be created to develop recommendations that would guide the creation of an interim permitting framework during the rulemaking process. This multi-agency committee, led by the DNR, would be charged with submitting a report with recommendations to the state legislature by January of 2025. Implementation of an interim permit framework would have to be approved by the legislature. Again, thank you for your time. I'll be available for questions.
Thank you so much. Our final testifier, Kyle, please make your way. You can introduce yourself for the record and begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Kyle Makarios, and I'm here today on behalf of Mining Minnesota. We are the trade association of companies and organizations advancing a sustainable future through responsible mining, processing, and domestic supply chain utilization of our mineral resources. We're very excited about the discovery of a very large and uniquely pure deposit of helium gas in northern Minnesota. As an inert noble gas, helium holds a unique place within the manufacturing industry and the materials that we use every day, such as semiconductors, fiber optic cables, and computer hard drives. Our communication systems, our digital connections to one another are dependent upon helium. The single largest use is in MRIs, where liquid helium creates an extremely cold environment that allows for the use of magnetic coils to become superconductors and allows for medical professionals to see, diagnose, and ultimately save lives. Minnesota has a unique opportunity to provide this rare resource, and multiple companies have expressed interest in our state after hearing the initial findings of pulsar helium's exploration. With a discovery of greater than 10% pure helium, it is being recognized that Minnesota has a world-class resource with vast potential to provide for our nation's growing needs. Not only are the concentrations in Minnesota's resource significant, so is the fact that our helium is not found within a natural gas deposit, which is where most helium resources are found. Consistent, workable regulations would allow for companies to explore, permit, and enter production within Minnesota. The state stands to gain not only from the production of helium and associated royalties, but also the jobs associated with the exploration, processing, and ancillary businesses. We want to thank Senator Hauschild for carrying this important bill that will allow for the development of regulations necessary to produce this critical resource for healthcare, communications, aerospace engineering, and many other uses. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Kyle, and nice job staying within your time, a lot of time. Are there other members of the public that would like to testify before we close and move to member questions? Okay, we will move to member questions and comments. Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Hauschild. I know we've discussed this in another committee, but I just have a couple of questions. I've been told that Minnesota does not have oil, that we're kind of definitive that there's no oil in our ground. So I ask again, why are we including oil in this bill?
Senator Hauschild.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Morrison. I'm going to pass it to DNR. I think they will have a better explanation. I've heard the explanation, but I would like the DNR to answer.
Mr. Henderson.
Chair, Senator, we already have oil and gas exploration and extraction rules. What we have lacked is further development of those rules. They've been on the books since sometime in the early 90s. What this does is it adds those non-petroleum gases to those existing rules. And as was said earlier, typically helium is found with some level of hydrocarbon gases involved. And in fact, you don't hear about it, but even this pulsar discovery has 2 to 3% methane in it. And so realistically, we've never had those rules because the geology of Minnesota is not such that we have hydrocarbon oils or gases. They have never been discovered, even though we've had rules in place for some time. So we need to develop those permitting rules. Of course, even if it's only 2 to 3%, we would want to mandate that they manage that correctly, that we fee them for it in royalties and rentals, and that we have a system in place for environmental and worker safety as well as taxation. There's only one other helium discovery, I will note, that is of record that we could find in Carlton County. Some time ago, a helium discovery was logged there, and that helium was 2 to 3% helium and approximately 98% methane.
Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, I appreciate that. So oil and gas just go together like peas and carrots. We just keep them together. Okay. You know, in terms of I'm happy for the executives at Pulsar, the Canadian company that is talking about doing this extraction, but I want to make sure that the people who live in Lake County benefit from this. So this seems like a real opportunity to ensure that, if this is really as unique a finding as it sounds like it is. So what kind of guarantee can be, or reassurance can you give to us in the legislature and the people of Lake County that will be the case, that they will adequately be benefiting from this, not just the executives of the Canadian company?
Senator Hauschild.
Thanks, Senator McQuaid, or Chair McQuaid and Senator Morrison. That's actually one of the main reasons I want this legislation, is for that exact purpose. As I described in my initial opening remarks, the extraction of helium in our current state without this legislation can occur from a drill site on private land, taking the gas from under the ground that is pooled over perhaps many miles. And so what we're doing is not only regulating that and making sure we have the rules in place, we're also going to create a royalty and pooling structure that ensures if the gas is determined to have come from state, county, or school trust land, that those royalties are properly paid to the local governments. And this is something that was brought to me by the local government officials. That's why Commissioner Svei was here, because they realized they could do their own leasing, but at the end of the day, if we want to make sure that ultimately our local communities are benefiting, we need these royalties and pooling rules in place for them to fully benefit.
Senator Morrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Hauschild. Just one last question. Do we have any reassurance that these will be union jobs, and will Pulsar be on the permits?
Senator Hauschild?
Chair McQuaid, Senator Morrison, this bill, unless the DNR wants to correct me if I'm wrong, do not specifically talk about one company or what they might do. What we're really talking about is the rules and framework and regulatory environment that will exist for the industry generally. So the idea is to create a fair way that this extraction can happen so that companies like Pulsar are paying their fair share to the local governments. We have not talked about specific PLAs or union contracts with Pulsar, and we have not they're still in discovery drilling, so they're not at a commercialization stage yet. Certainly, with other extraction industries in northern Minnesota, I have always been a champion for making sure there were union contracts. We recently, on another mining project, over many decades had fought that fight, and ultimately they have now signed a steelworker contract. So I would certainly be someone that will be pushing that effort locally, but that's not really what this bill is. So I can attest to you that I will do that work. Long story short.
Senator Morrison?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, Senator Hauschild. I just would implore DNR to make sure that Pulsar, or whatever the company, it sounds like it would be Pulsar, is on the permit and responsible for any potential pollution, the way Glencore is not on the polymet permit.
Thank you, Senator Morrison. Senator Lang?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess, I see the purpose of the bill. I see what you're doing, and I appreciate it. I think it's a good idea to, this is what the range lives on. So obviously, this is something that goes along with your constituents and what you're worried about. But I'm a little concerned on Section 4, the rulemaking section, and I know that's why you're sitting in front of our committee now. It seems that this bill is going to get numerous department heads. You have the Commissioner of Pollution Control Agency may adopt or amend. The Commissioner of Health may adopt or amend. EQB may adopt or amend. The Commissioner of Natural Resources may adopt or amend. And I don't know if this is an attempt as the author to make some peace in the valley of some way. But I'm a little worried about this section. Could you just dive into that for a second? Excuse me.
Senator Hauschild?
Thanks, Chair McQuaid, and thank you, Senator Lang. These were the agencies that were determined to have a jurisdiction over this rulemaking process and the regulatory environment. That's why they were chosen. But I will point out that the intent is for this to have an expedited rulemaking process of 24 months, which is, I think, a very reasonable process for rulemaking.
Senator Lang?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 24 months in that now, in my mind, when we've been working on trying to smooth the flow of permitting through all kinds of projects throughout the state, whether we're talking renewable resources or exploration for oil and gas or helium or whatever it may be, this feels a lot like another permitting process. This feels a lot like now these agencies have that much time after a permitting process or before a permit's even going to be applied. That's a little worrisome for me. I don't know if this is going to help your cause or it's going to hurt your cause. And I have the feeling it may end up hurting your cause. So that's the question, I guess. I don't know. I'd be maybe, and it does say notwithstanding any rulemaking authority. I know that, or interfering with any rulemaking authority in the last paragraph there. But I think you're probably, it'd be worth adding to that something that streamlines it along with the permitting process. Otherwise, you may be setting yourself up. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Senator Lang. I'm going to go to myself and then Senator Carlson if there's other members who have questions. Okay, I'll add you to the list. Senator Hauschild, this could be for you or for Mr. Henderson. have not seen this in another committee, and so this is my first foray into anything related to this topic. I'm deeply skeptical in general of extraction, just in general, but I do understand that it can happen whether we pass this bill or not. Mr. Tollefson will either be very embarrassed to have been my AP Chem teacher or very excited that he was my AP Chem teacher when I asked the following questions. So we've had conversation, I've heard a lot about oil and gas, which was my question, but I've heard about helium, I've heard about methane, and I've heard about hydrogen. All of those are gases, yes? Yes, okay. I still don't understand why we then have gas or oil throughout this statute. In particular, I'm looking in the rulemaking on Section 4, sub C, production includes extraction and beneficiation of gas or oil from consolidated or unconsolidated formations in the state. Maybe I need to go back to my geography class. Can you just explain what that is? And if we struck the word oil throughout this bill, would we still be capturing the helium that we're looking for, the hydrogen we might be exploring for, the methane that we might want to capture, or would that fundamentally change what we've been talking about in front of this committee? Senator Hauschild and/or Mr. Henderson. Yeah.
Chair, what I can offer is that if we were to strike the word oil, we would be striking existing language. Oil exploration and drilling is already approved in the state. And so we kept the package together as it was earlier talked about oils and gases. However, when we looked in history for the oil and gas rules and that was which was established in the early 90s, it defined those gases for the most part as hydrocarbon gases. So that's why we had to change to add the noble gases, the non-hydrocarbon gases, including things like argon and hydrogen and helium.
Thank you. That is helpful. I'm still deeply skeptical of extraction and mostly the ways in which land and our environment is affected or not always known how it's affected when we extract things, and then who is responsible for those effects. And so I'm a little comforted by seeing the members of this, all these pieces under rulemaking, because it makes me feel better, not worse. But in general, I kind of approach like stuff is in the ground because it's in the ground for a reason. And so when we take stuff out of the ground, it makes me really worried about what's going to happen. I do understand that helium is a diminishing, non-replaceable resource that we have on this planet that is really important for important things. But thank you for explaining that, and I think that's enough for me in this committee. But I'm still just a little about it. Senator Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that I'm kind of looking for here is, the discussion says that normally or often the helium is captured or is co-located with methane and other hydrocarbon gases. And are we putting in oversight for those gases? For instance, if it's a small amount of methane or if it's a large amount that can be captured and also sold, or are we going to flare off? I'm wondering if there's a discharge involved in this mining of helium.
Mr. Henderson.
Chair, Senator, those are some of the exact conversations we've had with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, who has authority via, US EPA for the Clean Air Act in the state of Minnesota. So again, another constituent that's frequently found, as you know, methane is a greenhouse gas, but CO2 is also frequently found with helium or hydrogen. And so the Clean Air Act, in talking with the PCA, that's why you see they may adopt rules. They believe they already have many of the rules that they would need in the Clean Air Act already to be able to require the management of the greenhouse gas, constituents that may come paired with, hydrogen extraction or helium extraction.
Senator Carlson.
Yeah, and just one kind of extra confirmation is this something where the process will be permitted whether or not there's a separation as this is mined? I mean, I don't know if this product can be contained after it's mined as a mixture of gases, and if it's going to be separated at the mine site, and how that's actually handled.
Mr. Henderson.
Chair, Senator, that is some of what the company is looking at right now. The company is saying that they have a feasibility study that they have undertaken since they've discovered this world-class deposit. They're now looking at, trying to assess how large is the pool, how long would the pool last, and what type of operation they should put for separating those gases on site and concentrating those for most effective, shipment and management. But yes, those gases you would have CO2, you would have nitrogen, you would have methane, you would have helium, all would be separated and cleaned, so to speak, concentrated and then shipped.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Hauschild, for your desire to bring jobs to your community. One of the things I've agonized over for my entire adult life is economic development and production of jobs, good-paying union jobs, with the need to preserve our natural resources. And I just want to show a little bit of concern that I'm not quite sure where in Babbitt the helium extraction is going to take place, but Babbitt is on the Birch Lake, and Birch Lake flows into the boundary waters. So as we go through this process, I'll try my best to, with heightened ears and eyes, watch that process to preserve our crown jewel of in our park service, in our national parks and wilderness areas. I'd hate for anything to happen to that gem, and so, but thank you.
Thank you,
So
sir.
no question, just that comment.
Thank you. Senator Hauschild, closing remarks.
Just to, Senator McQuaid and Senator Swedzinski, just so that you're aware, and I think it would be appropriate to check with the Friends of the Boundary Waters and some of the groups that are interested in that to determine where they're at on this issue. It's my understanding that they do not have concerns. However, I don't want to speak for them, so.
Thank you. Do you want to do closing remarks on your bill?
I think I've, made the points. I mean, I think this is something that is truly needed in our region to make sure that our local communities can benefit. And so I hope that you all will help support it.
Thank you. Yes, and Senator Hauschild, I'm glad that this discovery happened in and around session time so we could have a good conversation and do this the right way, so I appreciate that. All right, Senator Carlson moves that Senate File 5048 is recommended to pass and re-refer to the Finance Committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion prevails. You are on your way to Finance, Senator Hauschild. Thank you. Next up, we have Senate File 2394, Senator Kupec's bill. Please come forward. Senator Kupec, this is your third stop.
Is it?
Yes. So
Take your word for that.
Good job.
Feels like a long and winding road.
I sense that. I sense that from you, Senator Kupec. Members, since this is our third stop, we have experts that are available for questions. Senator Kupec, do you want to just give us an overview of your bill and then see if we have some member questions?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. While the bill says 2394, which appears to be the Physician Assistance Compact Bill, it is actually 7 compact bills all rolled into one after we left Judiciary. So they are the Physician Assistance Compact by myself. It's the Occupational Therapy Licensure Compact by Senator Abler. Senator Morrison has 3 compact bills in here: physical therapists, licensed professional counselors, and social workers. Senator Bolden has the audiology and speech language pathology compact, and Senator Nelson has the dentist and dental hygienist compact. So all of these compacts operate in a similar way. Some of them, the majority of them, are really joining compacts that are already formed. There are a few, such as mine, the physician assistants that are trying to form a national compact, and when 7 states have joined on, then that national compact would start. We are one of the few states here at the beginning of that. So all of these, again, have similar nature, similar rulemaking properties. The good thing about these compacts, it will allow freedom of workers movement across state lines. We've particularly heard from a lot of military families when they get moved around the country to different bases. Maybe their spouse is one of these that has this occupation that allows that spouse or partner to work wherever they travel then around the country. And then the other good part about this is particularly in rural areas, in districts such as my own, where a lot of the health care is provided on the North Dakota side. Sometimes they want to do a telehealth follow-up with that. They are not allowed to do that because they do not necessarily have that license that transfers across the border into Minnesota. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of it. And there are a whole bunch of experts here if you have specific questions that they can answer.
Thank you, Senator Kupec. Member, are there questions? Okay. And with that, Senate File 2394 is laid on the table. Thank you, Senator Kupec.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee.
Next up, we have Senate File 4570, Senator Wiklund's bill. Welcome, Senator Wiklund. Always happy to have you here.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Before we dive into your bill, would you like us to move your amendments?
We can do that, or I can,
Why don't- yeah.
I can describe. I have two technical amendments. One of them, the A16, it does things like it inserts dollar amounts for some of the blank fee and places where a fee needed to be entered. There's some other technical changes that came forward since the bill left my committee from the different entities involved. And trying to think of, I mean, there basically are technical changes that were requested that we make as we bring the bill passed through this committee and to Finance.
Thank you, Senator Wiklund. Why don't you give us a quick overview of your bill now that we understand your amendments, and then we
Sure.
will move to adopt those amendments.
Yeah, that sounds good. So in Senate File 4570 is similar in a way to the previous bill that you just heard from Senator Kupec. This is an omnibus bill with all of the health professional licensing and scope of practice policy bills that we heard and vetted and combined together in this omnibus to make it a little bit more streamlined, this process, this session. The Health and Human Services Committee, we spent a great deal of time examining. We had, I think, over 30 bills that related to different health professional licensing and scope. We were not able to even hear all of the bills. But we tried to bring forward the ones that stakeholders had been working on. Some of them have been working on them for an extended period of time, many years. And we really wanted to make progress in terms of this area this session. Some of the reasons for that, as Senator Kupec mentioned, are also applicable to this bill. There are over 13 professions represented in this bill, and 3 more if we are able to combine the compact bill with this. It is a bipartisan bill. There are bipartisan chief authors and co-authors on the bills, and I think there's a diverse professions represented, everything from not only what you think of as health professionals like dentists or dental assistants, optometrists, acupuncture specialists, doctors, midwives, but then also there are 2 bills that relate to veterinary medicine because that is also handled within the Health and Human Services Committee. Some of the reasons for bringing forward the bills are we need to have appropriate regulation for these professions, and we want to expand access for Minnesotans to get care from professionals, and by making sure their scope definition is appropriate or by encouraging new professions to enter the field, we can address and extend supply or expand supply for people in Minnesota. We also want to ensure that we're addressing the safety of the public when we do this and making sure that the regulation fits the role. Currently, as one example, behavioral analysts in Minnesota do not need any licensure to practice, and there's not regulation, and that's a profession that has a high degree of skill needed and chance for people to get, patient safety is a real concern. So those are some of the highlights. I think the need for hearing in this committee relates to rulemaking authority, and that applies to, for example, in the transfer care specialist, applies to the Department of Health. In other cases, there's rulemaking authority given to boards, the Board of Psychology, Board of Veterinary Medicine, Board of Nursing, to adopt rules for various provisions. And I'll stop there, and if there are any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Senator Wiklund. Let's move the amendments so we get the bill in the part of the shape we were looking to get it into. Senator Morrison will move the A16 amendment. Members, any questions on the A16 before we vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The A16 is adopted. Next, we're going to go to the A19. Senator Fateh will offer the A19 amendment. Members, any questions about the A19?
Madam Chair, I can just tell you that this is the kind of an appropriations amendment. It puts the different appropriations needed for each of the different bills that are included, and these are all out of the special revenue fund. So there's not general fund appropriations.
Thank you, Senator Wiklund. Members, any questions about the A19? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? The A19 is adopted. All right, so we have before us 4570 as amended. It is laid over on the table. Oh, no, not yet. Oh, thank you. It is not laid over on the table, or so picks back up from the table. Members, we are now going to amend Senate File 4570, which is before us, with all of the sections from the previous bill that Senator Kupec brought to us, Senate File 2394. So we're bringing together the scope bill, the compact bill. Are there any questions about that motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, Senate File 4570. Senator Jaskowski.
Since it's still before us, Madam Chair, I didn't get a chance to ask Senator Kupec this because it arrived from his bill, but his bill doesn't have the nurses compact in it. Any idea why?
Senator Wiklund.
Madam Chair, Senator Jaskowski, that was a bill that was introduced this session, and as I mentioned, we did not hear every bill that related to compacts or scope of practice, and that was one that we did not hear in my committee.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair.
Senator Jaskowski.
Thank you, and thank you, Senator Wiklund. So, I mean, that at least from what I am hearing from people throughout this session and before in my community elsewhere, is an area that has the largest amount of discussion. We certainly have more discussion about that than any of these others. So why was it not heard when these others were?
Senator Wiklund.
Madam Chair, Senator Jaskowski, I believe that we have had hearings on that in the Senate in previous years, and it has some, I believe, a lack of consensus that it is supported, and I did not feel that we would bring that bill forward due to that.
Senator Jaskowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Wiklund. I suspect it has to do with the Minnesota Nurses Association. That would be my guess, Madam Chair, members. Certainly the majority marches to the beat of that drum really well, and because of that, it was excluded from the bill. it's a huge need in our state and would help with healthcare coverage in areas, especially the rural areas of the state, where we need that type of mobility of people. And it's just unfortunate that partisan motivations in this body are preventing something that the people of Minnesota need. And many of the elements of these bills, Senator Wiklund, are good. I've read them, but it's just a shame that that's not included in here at this point, and certainly should be. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, any other comments or questions? Okay. Senate File 4570 as amended is laid on the table. Oh, Senator Wiklund, did you have something to add?
Well, the bill needs to go to finance, or are we going to do that?
We are going to take up the House file,
Okay.
or is that not correct? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We
have
will be
another
taking
step.
up the House file,
All right.
amending the Senate file onto the House file, and then sending
I
the
will
House
just-
file onto the finance.
Just want to make sure we get to finance.
Okay, so now that we are procedurally caught up, Senate File 4570 is laid on the table. House File 4247 is now before the committee. Did I hear a question? Senator Drazkowski?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Is it in our packet, the House file?
Senator Drazkowski, I don't believe it is.
Can we get it, Madam Chair? It'd be good to read the bill before we vote on it.
Senator Drazkowski, we're going to offer Senate File 4570 as a DE to the House file, so it's just the number, not the, there's not going to be additional House file content. It'll be what we have before us in 4570 as amended. Senator
Okay.
Drazkowski?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. So House File 4247 is now before the committee. Senator Fateh moves to amend House File 4247 by deleting everything and inserting the contents of Senate File 4570 as amended. Questions about that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Noted. The motion prevails. We now have House File 4247 as amended. Questions or comments, members, before we vote to pass it to finance? Okay. Senator Gustafson moves that House File 4247 as amended is recommended to pass and be re-referred to the Finance Committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
The motion prevails. Senator Wiklund, you are on your way to finance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. What is this related to? Those are the experts for all. I see. Okay, yep, okay, great. All right. Now we have Senate File 2026, Senator Mohamed. Your turn. Introduce yourself, and you may begin whenever you are ready.
Hi, Madam Chair. I'm Zainab. It's good to be here with all of you. I feel like a testifier.
We're glad you're here. Begin whenever you're ready.
All right. So, members, before you is Senate File 2026, a bill to launch speed camera traffic safety program. This pilot program, this bill allows for a pilot of traffic safety cameras, which are a proving tool to make our roads safer. This program will allow us to try traffic safety cameras in Minnesota and learn more about a limited initial implementation. We adopted an amendment in the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee to ensure that the implementation and enforcement is entirely in uniform. Section 16, Subdivision 17 are what land this bill within your jurisdiction in the State and Local Government Committee. It is clarifying that the standards are prescribed to be developed by MINDA and DPS, are not subject to rulemaking processes because this is a pilot program and temporary. Within the pilot, there is required evaluation and reporting that can inform potential future legislation on this topic. Thank you, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator Mohamed. And do you have a testifier or do you have an expert with you in case there are questions?
An expert who will review some of the questions if I can't answer them.
Thank you, Senator Mohamed. Members, are there questions? Senator Barr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious, have you looked at any of the previous Supreme Court rulings that said against red light cameras, and how do you plan on, the basic problem was you can't identify the driver, you're penalizing the vehicle, and it's a conflict of you're penalizing the vehicle as opposed to actually penalizing the person that committed the crime. Even though it's a minor, misdemeanor, not a felony kind of thing, but it's still the person who committed the violation is not, you're persecuting the car as opposed to, and that was found unconstitutional in our state courts in 2007. So I'm kind of curious how you're making this pilot work.
I don't often say this, but Senator Barr, I had the same question.
That's a really good question. Thank you, Senator Barr, Madam Chair. The Supreme Court rule found that it wasn't in statutory, and so I think the way that the bill is written now has clarified some of the language that we needed to, and I'll have my expert add more if that need to be.
Mr. Foley.
Yes, hello everyone, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Ethan Foley. I'm the Vision Zero Program Coordinator for the City of Minneapolis working on traffic safety. And to this question, this bill is providing that statutory authority that a jurisdiction would need to do a pilot program of traffic safety cameras. Previous program that the City of Minneapolis had on red light cameras, which is almost 2 decades ago now, we didn't have that specific statutory authority to be able to charge the owner of the vehicle in a case of a traffic safety camera violation. And so that is what this bill is, making legal, to be able to charge it that way. That's how it's done in 27 other states that have traffic safety camera programs that we can look to. Some of those states have had their programs go through challenges as well, and none of them that are set up the way that we're setting them up have been found unconstitutional in any other state. I'll note the Supreme Court didn't rule specifically on constitutionality in Minnesota, and so it's possible that I'll just be honest, that there could be a court case on that in the future in this program, but more recently there haven't been in other states because it's been found constitutional pretty consistently.
Senator Barr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you are right. There probably will be a challenge to this. The first time you have, I loan my car, or the husband, it's in the husband's name, the wife drives it, or they loan it to a friend, and somebody gets a ticket in it, there will be a challenge on that because that's what was actually challenged before. The ticket didn't go to the person actually committing the crime. It went to the owner of a vehicle who may not even have been in the vehicle at the time. So yes, I'm sure you'll have a challenge on that in the future. The next question is so the pilot program, are you just looking at how many violations you can find? Are you actually issuing tickets? Can you walk through that process a little bit, please?
Senator Mohamed.
Yeah, so it's a pilot program, and the goal of it is, so the first time somebody gets, somebody's speeding or passing a red light, they are gonna be getting a citation, which is, they're gonna get a warning, and the second time, they will get a ticket that's either $40, or instead of that, they can do a traffic safety course, and the third ticket is $80. And the goal of it is, of the bill, at least when we wrote it, is to make sure that it's not punitive, but it's to change behavior when people are on the roads.
Senator Barr.
So once again, kind of going back to, believe me, I drive for a living, so I get where you're coming from. What the goal is, and I applaud the goal. It's the method of how we get to the goal is where where the problems always lie. So there's all kinds of situations that could come around on this, like my car got carjacked. So is the ticket still coming back to the owner? I mean, is there any Is there any mechanism in here to say, okay, I present a police report, my car was stolen, so from this time on, it was stolen approximately this time, I'm not going to get a ticket? Because every one of these tickets will get put on a record someplace, which goes back to my car insurance, which would elevate. So I just want to make sure that all those things are covered. So it looks like you're pointing out the exact line, so that would
Yep.
be helpful if you could just give that to me quick. Thanks.
Senator Mohamed.
Yeah, subdivision 14, 8.16 talks about that. The vehicle was stolen at the time of the violation, a transfer of interest. And so it talks about if you're not the individual who's driving the car, but you get it because you're the owner, you can go and say that you're not the individual who was driving the car. And there are methods to talk about that.
Senator Barr?
So this is only qualifies if there was like, my car was stolen kind of thing. If I loaned it to, let me just run another scenario past you. If I loan the car to a friend of mine and they're committing a crime with it, like being the wheelman for a bank robber or something like that, I can still, even though I'm the owner, I would still be able to go to court and say, I didn't know this was going on, not my fault, I don't get the ticket, but then it would get expunged so it doesn't get reported to the insurance company, driving my rates higher. Is that correct?
Senator Mohamed?
Yep, so if you loaned your car to a family member, a friend, whoever, you can bring a sworn statement that it wasn't you who was driving or whoever that was, and that won't go on your driving record.
Thank you.
And it's actually not meant to go into anyone's, driving records at all, just to be clear.
Thank you, Senator Mohamed. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Mohamed. I'm struggling with the what seems to be really just a free for all for the agency to decide what rules they're going to use for this pilot project. Looking at page 17, you exempt them from rulemaking under Chapter 14. So the normal, I was just looking up, normally if you used exempt rules, which I really wonder why these are written so loosely the way they are already in statute. But not only that, you exempt them from the exempt rules in the bill. So how is the agency going to get guidance when they make the rules? Is the agency just going to make the rules and issue them by edict and say, here are the rules? How is that going to happen?
Senator Mohamed.
And if you want to give me 1 second, but just to start, so in terms of rulemaking, this is a temporary program, and so it's not a long-term program. We want to see within a few years what the data looks like. And after that, we can talk more about if it did work, if this program was effective in terms of making our roads safer, if we got really good data. If it's effective, then we can talk about what that rulemaking should be. In terms of like the agency fully implementing it either statewide or that being a local control issue.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I recognize, Senator Mohamed, that it's temporary, but can you tell us how the agency is going to arrive at the rules for this temporary program?
Senator Mohamed.
Yeah. Thank you. So page 11, 11.3, prior to establishing the standards under paragraph A, the commissioner must solicit review and comments and consider any comments received. Implementing authority must follow the requirements and standards established under that subdivision. And so there are some rulemaking. Does that answer your question?
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not really, Senator.
And I'll let Ethan add to it, if that's
Senator
okay, Senator
Mohamed.
Drazkowski. I'll let Ethan add to it, my expert, if that's okay.
Okay.
Mr. Foley.
Chair and committee members, so and I think if you look at that, the section that starts on page 10 there, subdivision 4 traffic safety camera system requirements, this is what the commissioners, so the commissioners here refers to the MnDOT commissioner and the Department of Public Safety commissioner. You can see the standards that they need to create. If you look at this list, recording and data requirements is specified in subdivision 15. So this again is, we are establishing a lot of details in this pilot provision. So there's already a lot of framework that is included in here that directs what they must do. And then we're into a lot of really technical things. So requirements for monitoring site signage, procedures for placement, again, following the restrictions in the bill, training and qualifications, procedures for calibration. So these are really like technical details that the agency staff will be best suited to set. And then as part of this, as Senator Mohamed noted, they are required to seek and consider feedback in that process as well.
Senator Drazkowski, further questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm maybe more troubled after hearing that than I was before. So, I mean, it was admitted here that the agency is just going to make decisions on the details. And that's, members, Senator Mohamed, that's what rulemaking does, is, Senator Mohamed, rules provide a process by which the people of Minnesota can give input into what the agency is proposing. And it's overseen by the courts. So it's overseen by another branch of government. And I'll pull members' attention to Article 3 of our Minnesota Constitution. I'll read it for you. It's the distribution of powers of government. It says, the powers of government shall be divided into 3 distinct departments: legislative, executive, and judicial. No person or persons belonging to or constituting one of these departments shall exercise any of the powers properly belonging to either of the others, except in the instances expressly provided in this Constitution. So what that means, and what the practical application is, as we are here as lawmakers forming out bills like this one and extending authority, legislative authority, to the executive branch. And that's what we're doing on the bottom of page 17, beginning on line 27, telling them that they're not subject to any limitation around rules that they develop. In other words, you have a free rein, executive branch, on however you want to write the rules out, the details, as the testifier talked about, that relate to this pilot program. And that's what we are doing, is we are delegating to the executive branch. We are giving them, as the Constitution says, shall exercise any of the powers properly belonging to either of the others. In other words, the legislative powers to make law are being delegated to the executive branch. And members, the way that we get around, I shouldn't say get around, the way that this is mitigated in terms of the awkwardness of working these rules out and still maintaining constitutionality is that we have the judicial branch overseeing the changes that the executive branch is proposing to make certain that they align with the law that delegated them that authority in the first place. Without that, members, without that oversight by the judicial branch and the input from the citizens as part of that process of rulemaking, we are unconstitutionally delegating our powers to the executive branch. That's why we have rulemaking. And that's why we have a process for rulemaking. And we've seen it, members, again and again by the majority in this session, just willy-nilly throwing out parts of this process. It's very, very important. As a matter of fact, the way this bill is written, members, is it's unconstitutional. And if this was brought up and somebody was ready to bring a lawsuit and had the money to do it, this would get thrown out in court. I've got an amendment, members, and it is an A11 amendment, Madam Chair.
Senator Drazkowski moves the A11 amendment. We don't have it in our packet, so we'll wait for it to be passed to the chief author, not to the committee, and then we can have discussion. Senator Drazkowski, do you want to tell us a little bit about your amendment while it gets passed out?
Yes, the amendment deletes the exempt from rulemaking portion of page 17 that we have been talking about, Madam Chair, and inserts rulemaking to make this a constitutional bill. It says the commissioner is authorized to adopt rules under Chapter 14 to implement this section. This would make the bill actually constitutional. That's the amendment, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. Senator Mohamed, do you have a copy of the amendment?
I do.
Okay. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thanks, Senator Drazkowski. I will not adopt the amendment. I will ask members to not adopt the amendment today. One, because I'm getting this amendment right now. Two, we've really worked over the last year to work on this bill, and it's gone through committees last year, and this bill has been scaled down for a number of reasons. It's a pilot program, so in 2 years or in 4 years, if it doesn't work out and we don't think it's working, we can come back and create a different way we want to see it. But I'd say, like Senator Drazkowski, you had plenty of opportunity to come to my office and work with me, and you didn't, and so I'm going to ask members to not accept the amendment.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Mohamed. And you have plenty of opportunity to come to my office and help me with my bills too. But as a matter of fact, we've got a stack of them here that continue to fly through this place. As a matter of fact, this is the only scrutiny that this provision is going to receive because it is the jurisdiction of this committee to deal with rulemaking. This is where this discussion, members, is supposed to happen. And if it is to be amended, Senator Mohamed, it's not in one of the earlier committees and it's not in a later process. This is where it's supposed to happen. And I've heard members bring bills forward this session saying, well, this is the first time I've seen this amendment. The amendment is 2 lines long. It's not a difficult one to read. It's easy to understand. We had one in taxes this morning, and I wish you all could have been there, but Senator Rest had an amendment.
Can we stay within this committee? We have a lot on our agenda today.
It's certainly in the theme being discussed, Madam Chair, but it was a 1-line amendment, and she started off with saying, you know, I haven't seen this amendment before, and then she said, but you know what? This is a good amendment. I'm not going to use that shallow argument that we hear around here way too much, but she said, I support the amendment and we'll make it part of the bill. So that's how laws are supposed to be made around here. I just wish that members would stop bringing that as an argument, because when you've got a very understandable amendment like this, this is the place that we are to mark up the bill and to get it right here. The question is, are we going to get the bill right? Are we going to make it constitutional? Or are we going to pass it along in the process in the unconstitutional form that it is, which would be more malpractice by this legislature? So I hope we don't do that, Madam Chair and members. I encourage your support for the amendment. Let's make it constitutional. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski.
Ask for a roll call, Madam Chair.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Other discussion on the A11? Senator, no. Okay. We're going to vote on the A11 amendment. Roll call has been requested. Please take the roll.
Chair McQuaid?
No.
Chair Dietzick?
No.
Senator Anderson?
Yes.
Senator Barr?
Aye.
Senator Carlson?
No.
Senator Swedzinski?
Nope.
Senator Drazkowski?
Aye.
Senator Fateh?
No.
Senator Gustafson?
No.
Senator Jasinski?
Aye.
Senator Curran?
Yes.
Senator Lang?
Aye.
Senator Morrison?
No.
With 6 yeses and 7 noes, the A11 is not adopted. I am going to recommend, we are going to lay this over members, and I think this is an important conversation, and I encourage you to work together to see if there's a good solution in here, because I think this is a really good bill, and I think, Senator Drazkowski, you make arguments that are clearly very impassioned and important, and I don't want you to lose this conversation. I think you should work on something before we take action on it next.
Madam Chair, did you just say you're laying the bill over later after we're finished?
Eventually,
All right,
yes.
thank
We're going to
you, thank
continue
you. You had me
discussion. I'm
worried
just
there.
making a suggestion. Other discussion. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I agree with everything Senator Drazkowski is trying to do, but I'll go back to the transportation side for just a little bit, but I really agree with Senator Drazkowski. This is a bill that I've had some concern with in transportation. I made that pretty vocal to Senator Mohamed and her expert witness. I have frustrations with it. I think, again, we are actually penalizing a vehicle and not a person. And I won't go into the details why Minneapolis doesn't have the police officers to do this, because that's a whole different discussion. However, I think it really brings up something that is important. You know, we need police officers out there doing these types of things. And I agree with the safety standpoint to keep people to slow down and to abide by traffic signals and stop signs, but we are moving it to electronically, and that's not the way it should be done. The police officers are the ones who should be out there doing this, penalizing people, not cars. You know, that way they can look at every individual situation, what's going on, why that may happen, why it may not, who's in the car, who's not. It gives a law enforcement a chance to stop that vehicle for many, many other reasons besides going through a stop sign. There's also many, many complications of deciding who the person is in the car. We have a construction fleet of vehicles, and those vehicles, one person may take a truck one day and another person may take it the next day. And now you're giving a ticket to a vehicle and not a person. So you're going to put undue harm on businesses to have to go back and try and track who drove that truck on what day, in what fleet, and it's going to bring up a whole host of other issues that's just going to be a logistical nightmare to track who this ticket should be going to in the courts and all kinds of different issues. But this is a bill that I would not in favor of. It has many, many issues besides the one Senator Drazkowski brought up. However, the overall picture of what we're doing is a concern to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. Okay, Senator Lang, then Senator Drazkowski. I'm sorry, Senator Curran. Senator Lang, Senator Curran, Senator Drazkowski.
I'm first then? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's do, Senator Mohamed, could you just run down how this actually works? Because I'm reading through here about the traffic control devices and trying to contemplate how exactly this works, because there's a few different discrepancies as I've read through the bill. Someone, when they get pulled over by a police officer, the police officer runs their license. They pull them over for the infraction. They probably have a judgment call on whether or not they were, for example, in the middle of the intersection while you're taking a left turn. Everybody's been there, right? You're taking a left turn and the lights there's oncoming traffic in both ways. The light turns red and then you have your chance to get the heck out of the intersection before the other oncoming traffic has a green light. The officer has a discretion. They run your license. They know that that's either your car, it's not your car, it's a rental, it's borrowed from your buddy because you don't have a pickup, who knows. When the camera does it, can you tell me the process? The camera takes a picture of the license plate. Does an officer review that footage and say this person obviously, didn't intend to, but they were stuck out in the middle of an intersection? Does that officer go to a judicial branch person at that point and say, yeah, we have the right to send this out? Run through that process with me once.
Senator Mohamed.
Yeah, so before the ticket gets out and sent to the individual who owns.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Before the
Senator
ticket or the
Okay.
citation gets sent out to the individual who owns the car, there is a traffic enforcement agent who goes through it and sends and mails it to the owner of the car. And in that case, that owner can go.
So the picture's taken, thank you,
Senator
Madam Chair.
Lang.
So the picture's taken, and it goes to an officer computer someplace. You said a traffic agent?
Enforcement agent.
Senator
What's-
Mohamed. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What's an agent? It's a police officer, right?
Senator Mohamed.
I believe, so right now, the program is for Mendota Heights and Minneapolis specifically. I believe Mendota Heights will be using the police department. I believe that Minneapolis will be using a traffic enforcement agency or I think they have that department that they'll be using of people who are non-licensed police officers who will be going through the data.
Mr. Foley?
Yeah, Chair, Senators, so yes, that is, the bill outlines a provision for trained traffic enforcement agents. They can be licensed peace officers or other local agents. That agent must review the camera footage to confirm that there was a violation, that there wasn't some other extenuating factor, you know, it was an emergency vehicle, some of those affirmative defenses, kind of what you're talking about, somebody was already in the intersection, but they were waiting for traffic to clear while turning left. You know, that would be the type of thing that they're confirming there's an actual violation. And then that agent must be the one who issues either the warning or the citation. And so that is, for the city of Minneapolis, it's sort of similar to like a parking ticket, where we have a regulatory service department who does parking tickets. And so we would have trained agents likely in that division. They are doing other traffic related work, and they'd be trained in this to review that footage, confirm the violation before sending out any warning or citation.
Senator Lang?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess we've used agent and officer interchangeably, and if I heard you correctly, obviously we're not handing out tickets without a licensed peace officer doing so for a moving violation, correct?
Mr. Foley?
Chair, members, so this is not set up as a moving violation. This is like a parking ticket. This is set up as it doesn't go in your driver's record. It's going to the owner of the vehicle. We're not verifying that somebody was driving the vehicle, although someone who says I wasn't, provides a sworn statement as noted that they weren't driving, they would not be subject to the citation. But yeah, just to be clear on that.
Senator Lang?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry to keep going here, but so if it's a parking ticket, Senator McEwen just passed a bill a few weeks ago that talked about an unlimited number of parking tickets. How many moving violations can we get that are not moving violations and be enforced by not a police officer, and then not have a limit on that because of a bill you guys just passed a couple of weeks ago? All of a sudden, I'm in a very strange position where I don't know how the heck you can enforce this.
Mr. Fowler, Senator Mohamed?
I'm sorry, I would have to look into how that bill would intersect with this one. So I have to look back into my yeah.
Mr. Foley?
Yeah, Chair and members of the committee, I'll just remind that this is the setup in 27 other states around the country. So we are taking their best practices from those other states and how you set up the system to be effective. How are you improving safety by addressing unsafe behavior? How are you making sure that it can be set up to be fair and equitable, protect privacy, give people, you're required to have a chance to, if you want to contest the ticket, giving people reasonable outs. So we've taken those lessons from those other states and incorporated into that in the bill. And it's set up as a pilot because we also recognize we're going to probably learn some things locally that we want to apply and maybe before this is a permanent program. And so we'll be able to learn those lessons along the way, but we're really confident with the starting point because we're building off of what the work that's been done in those other states.
Senator Lang?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does any of those other 27 states have an unlimited number of parking ticket? I mean, that seems as to me you're really not putting the pieces together here.
Mr. Foley?
Chair, members of the committee, what we see here is, yes, you could get an unlimited number of these tickets, right? But what we know is from other states is that almost everybody changes their behavior because do you want to get a ticket every time you go down that street because you want to go more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit every time? And so for almost everyone, I think in Washington, D.C., they have a challenge with Jeff Bezos. Because he doesn't care about paying the fine. But for almost everybody, they change their behavior. And so that's what we want. We don't want to be penalizing people. We want them to slow down, and that's why this is really effective because you have that certainty that if you are doing that unsafe behavior, you're going to get a citation after the initial warning.
Yeah, I can
Senator
go one
Lang.
more, and then I'll be done. But how many red light tickets does the Minneapolis Police Department hand out on an annual basis now?
Mr. Foley?
Chair, members of the committee, I don't know the exact number of red light camera tickets. I think last year, I don't want to misspeak about the total number of citations given out in the city. I don't have that at the top of my head. I will note that, we recognize that traffic enforcement in the city of Minneapolis, for a variety of reasons, a lot about capacity, is down significantly, particularly since 2020. We had 31 people killed in the last 2 years in Minneapolis. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. In traffic crashes that involved someone clearly speeding or running a red light. The two things we're trying to address here. We need additional tools to be able to address that challenge and protect our residents and our visitors to the city. And that's what this bill does. It gives us a chance to test something that's been proven in many other states to improve safety. In MnDOT study, every other place that's looked at speed safety cameras have found reductions in speeding, crashes, injuries, and deaths. Every other study in the United States. And so it's giving us a chance to try that, given the challenges we're seeing on our streets that are real. And so that's why we're here supporting, that's why I'm here. I work on traffic safety. My job is to have nobody dying on our streets. And so that's why I'm here asking for your support for us to try this proven method and with a smart regulations in place to make sure that we can do it fairly and protect people's privacies and rights through that process. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foley.
No, I've had enough, Madam Chair.
Senator Karan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Senator Mohamed, in your testifier, I think you just described a whole host of states that have already deemed it successful. You don't know the basic parameters of the red light running citations. You described accidents or deaths as that's important to reduce. We all share that goal. But you just described 27 states that have done this successfully. It's achieved all the goals. You won't have anything to measure it against with the hope, except the hope of deaths going down. But with all of the other lack of enforcement of everything across the board in Minneapolis, I doubt you have a matrix that you could compare it to that would show anything besides what you choose to make public that would show in your favor. But I think when you look at the length of the pilot, 4 years is a long time for which you've referenced. 27 other states have a long history. I would assume there's very little to learn from that point. Our people are different, right? I don't think that's going to be the case. Hopefully it brings more into compliance, but likely not bringing into compliance those that don't care. And do all of the other states or that you've seen, that you've studied extensively, have such a lenient propensity to make sure to not have any punitive consequences, which is what this state has done, and what this legislature has done with just a parking ticket. And I get these are administrative, they're not parking tickets, I get it. But your first ticket is a freebie or is a warning, or the first violation is a warning. The second one is a, what do they call it? Diversion. And then you go back and then you go into really the penalty piece of it, right? And to try and get conformity into the compliance of the law, which is then further restricted because, of course, you wouldn't impact anybody's driver's license. 1,000 tickets or more on parking, doesn't matter. There's no way to enforce it. You're removing the ability to have any real teeth in it. So I just don't, I don't see how you're going to make it really effective. But back in your 4-year pilot, to me, this justifies or strengthens Senator Drazkowski's requirement that this rulemaking process be transparent and follow the Constitution, because really the intent of this is not, there's no need for a 4-year pilot. 2 years you'd be able to learn as much as you need, especially since you've referred all these other states have got long histories of success. So I think it strengthens, you should have it, because the reality is this isn't a pilot. This is just your entry into these cameras sold under the guise that it's a pilot. So let us subvert all of the actual rules to write law and to enforce penalties. And so I think it strengthens it. We couldn't support it because I don't think it'll be constitutional, and I hope it's challenged by somebody. But isn't it in conflict of everything you guys have done in Minneapolis when you think about the imposition of penalties, whether they be moving violations or otherwise, that it's going to hurt low income, middle income, low income the hardest, for which then you would want more people in Minneapolis then be into that same environment where more and more of them are going to get stuck with administrative fees, fines, and penalties, for which you've already waived and removed all the penalties. So I see a huge conflict here. And so are you just going after the honest person again, just that one honest person that might be imposed or might change their behaviors? It just seems in direct contrast to everything you talk about and everything this legislature has done and everything Minneapolis has done. So I have a challenge with that. I'll ask my question on the implementation. Does the city of Minneapolis, I don't see anywhere in here, it just is more enabling, but the nuts and bolts of it, when Senator Lang went through the process of you're going to have agents that you'll swear in or train as agents, not law enforcement. They could be one and the same. But when they're reviewing that scenario of that left turn lane, because that's probably the most prevalent one where it's out of your control and you didn't violate any law or you didn't break any red light law. Does that officer is it provided with the video or the actual snapshot of the camera for which is provided to the citizen? How does that work?
Mr. Foley.
Chair, Senators, so the specific details are typically, so if a car is already into the intersection, it's not even going to trip the camera, because if you enter the intersection before the light turns red, then you would not be in violation for sure. And so if you're already halfway into the intersection, it shouldn't trip the sensor to even take a picture and video. Now, there might be a situation where for some reason it did, and that's what they would be confirming that there's actually a violation of running red light. So that's what they would be confirming as part of that.
Madam Chair.
Senator Curran.
So that wasn't your testimony to Senator Lang when he described the same scenario. He just didn't ask whether they get a snapshot or live video, and your answer was different. You answered that while the agent would review that ticket, would review that to ensure it was an actual violation before they mailed out the ticket. And then there's some appeal process, which I'm not sure what that looks like. So your answer is different. And so I'm asking, the other part of that question was, regardless of that scenario, so when they review it, when they review a violation or whatever parameters would cause it to review, because you said they review them, what scenarios, what typically is the percentage of those that are pushed up for review? And then what is the information that agent has to review before they affirm that it's a violation?
Mr. Foley.
Chair, Senators, well, we don't know what percentage so all of them would be reviewed, right? They all have to be reviewed by that trained enforcement agent. We don't know what percentage the agent will determine weren't actually a violation, but that's part of what we require in the reporting for the evaluation here of the pilot program. There's a requirement for reporting on the number of times that the camera sensed a violation and reported that and sent it along, and then the number of times that the reviewing agent determined that there actually wasn't a violation. So again, that helps inform our work going forward and evaluating the pilot.
Madam Chair.
Senator Curran.
What data will be available to the agent making that? Is it a snapshot or is it the video preceding the snapshot, which the person who receives the ticket will likely get because they're not getting video? What will they have available when they review that? Is it video? Is it record 5 seconds before, 30 seconds before, and 30 seconds after? What is that information?
Mr. Foley.
Chair, Senators. So it doesn't start recording until it senses a violation. So it happens simultaneously. We can most programs they're recording both pictures and video, and particularly for speeding violations, you definitely do both. And then so we would. I think typically we would likely have both pictures and video, but honestly, that's a detail we will have to finalize when we get there, and it might be part of what MnDOT is setting in their guidelines and standards.
Madam Chair.
Senator Curran.
So with that, I assume you're not building this infrastructure yourself. You're going to contract with one of the providers that does this all across the nation. And so I'm sure you've already test-driven the user interface and all of those things as they're doing a pre-sale to you as you've searched all those 27 states. I assume you didn't come here without having all of that data. Is that correct?
Mr. Foley.
Chair, Senators, we've done our due diligence on this, and so, as has MnDOT, and I will note that MnDOT has already done some testing for work zone, portion of this as well. Mendota Heights has, a warnings program right now that's using a similar technology. So yes, we're all collectively looking at the options and also, the final RFPs and other things to find those third-party vendors and other things. We haven't gone so far as create those because we need the legislative authority to do it.
Madam Chair.
Senator Curran.
Madam Chair, you to procure it, you need the legislative authority to do that, but you've already done the pre-sales work and I'm sure traveled all over the country. And so when I ask, what is a typical percentage of those that get thrown out into an error resolution queue for officer review, I can't believe that any of the 27 states have provided to you and or any of the multiple providers who have years of experience in it didn't provide that information to you.
Mr. Foley.
I just don't understand that piece. You guys have studied this, 27 states, he's extraordinarily confident. I used to do, that was part of my world, selling those services into municipalities, government, and we did the payment processing side for most of those entities who did that all across the country and all across the world. So you have the information, it's a little disingenuous to not say we know those things for us. I'll move on.
And Senator Curran, I just want to note too, I've been really lenient, but we are, rulemaking is the most important piece for this committee, so I want to make sure we're staying within our jurisdiction.
Madam Chair,
Senator Curran.
with the absence of that rulemaking or to everything that they've said should further justify the need for the rulemaking, I'll
Continue with your question.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'll just leave with this one. So in those traditional contracts are typically a rev share of some sort that you've defined. So this one will actually be, many of these will just be subsidized. You're going to end up paying that vendor for the violations and the cost to manage all of those things because you're going to give the first one's a freebie, the second one's a diversion, and so you'll likely be then paying them for some type of service or have it offset based on the fees that you do collect. But with Minneapolis, I don't see a great track record that they'll end up having to, or that it will cover it, and or the fees will have to be much higher to cover those services. So I just worry about those. We've seen them all over the timing of these things, and especially, I guess the last question I ask in the speeding ones, because the most I'm most familiar with is the red lights. In the speeding ones, so you're going to set a parameter. What is speeding? And so as you expand these things, then will that affect existing law enforcement and their discretion as they issue tickets in the same vicinity, the same city? Does that then change what happens for them or the ability for somebody to appeal anything that's issued from an officer as it relates to calling up the speeding violations on a speed camera? Because either they have a tolerance in it or they don't. And if they don't have a tolerance or discretion that it's 1 mile over the speed limit, then I would believe that likely all law enforcement that issue moving violations in that case would be tied to the same requirements. What is the work that you've seen in this 27 states that have put this in? How did they deal with that, and how did it affect other law enforcement discretion as it relates to traffic enforcement?
Mr. Foley. succinctly.
Chair, Senators, for that, I'm just thinking about your question. So the bill sets for speeding a threshold of 10+ miles an hour over the speed limit. So you can't issue a warning or citation from the automated speed camera for less than that. Now, it does not have any impact on the ability of officers to pull someone over for a violation. There is a provision you can't be charged for the same crime twice. So if that were to happen, in a speed camera zone, you can't give both tickets. You would the officer pulling someone over, that would supersede the ability of a camera to send out a violation as well. And so that will be part of what we're checking for in the process. As far as other states, what we see from other states is this is part of the overall mix, right, for supporting traffic safety. It's part of the traffic enforcement mix. It's not wholly replacing officer enforcement. It's fitting into that mix. And so I'm not aware of other states that have any challenge in balancing that mix from the research that we've done.
Okay,
Madam
Senator
Chair,
Cran.
thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cran. And then I'm going to go to Senator Morrison, and then Senator Drazkowski and Senator Bart and then, because we have lots of other bills to get to, and I think everybody would like to eat dinner at some point tonight. I know I would. Senator Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank Senator Mohamed for bringing this idea forward, and I appreciate your commitment to keeping the streets of Minneapolis safe for people who live there, for people who work there, and for people who visit there. I appreciate your commitment to law and order in beautiful Minneapolis.
Thank you. Thank you. The wonderfully succinct Dr. Morrison. Okay, Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, on the bottom of page 15, talks about the use of the revenue, the ticket monies, and it looks like the monies go to the local units of government. I don't know what traffic calming is. The remainder can be used for traffic safety measures that perform traffic calming. Please tell me that's not the signs that are set out that distract drivers with messages that seem to be recreationally developed to provide poems and quips that somebody behind a desk somewhere thinks it's funny. Please tell me it's not that, but what is traffic calming?
Mr. Foley or Senator Mohamed.
Chair, members, no, it's not those signs. So yeah, it would be measures in the street design. So it varies based on the context. On a quiet local neighborhood street, traffic calming might look like a speed hump or a speed bump. On a busier, it could be in some places it could be a roundabout if that's the right condition, or it could be a median, and that's helping to just things that are proven to help manage and support safe speeds. So it varies a lot by context, I'll just say that.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I didn't mean to detour too long there, Madam Chair, but I am also troubled by one part of the bill on page 10. So the bill actually specifies 2 cities that are going to do this pilot. And then it says some town or city located somewhere in the country in Minnesota gets to do this, and so does some county, and the commissioner decides both. Now, in fairness to those 2 cities that are specified in the bill, they've at least had a chance, maybe some of the people in those cities have had a chance to hear this bill or learn about it, and certainly I think some of the decision makers in those places have. But that's not the case for the rural community and the county that are outlined in the bill. I don't know that that's fair to whoever those communities eventually are. I don't think it's a good part of the process. It's certainly not treating those communities the same as the 2 communities that are identified in the bill in this process. Madam Chair, I've got an amendment. It's an A12. It would delete those 2 uncertain parts out of the bill, lines 10.3 through 10.6 on the bill, and maybe give a chance for specifying those in the future, but for now taking them out of the bill.
Senator Drazkowski offers the A12 amendment. Thank you for describing it, Senator Mohamed. A copy will come to you shortly, but would you like to react?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Jaskowski. I will ask members to vote no on the amendment because these areas are not required to implement these cameras. They are absolutely can do it if they want to, and if they see an importance in it. Right now, Minneapolis and Mendota Heights are the only cities who said, we want to do this. We want to be the first ones that start this. And so let's say this town or this place in other parts of the state don't want to do it. They don't have to do it, but we want to give them the option to do so if they want to.
Thank you, Senator Mohamed. Discussions to the A12 amendment. Senator Jaskowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'd encourage adoption. I ask for a roll call, Madam Chair. I think it's fair to communities to know that they're going to be part of this ahead of time. I think the way you put Minneapolis and Mendota Heights in the bill is the right way to do it. But I don't think it's the right way to have the commissioner suddenly decide and county Candy, Ohio, or County Lake, or whichever county they determine is a county that is this, or maybe there's a county that wants to do it, Senator Mohamed, and they don't get a chance to provide that input. I think if you went with the two large communities you have here, that should give you a pretty good test. Encourage your support for the motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, further discussion on the A12. Roll call requested, roll call granted. Take the roll.
Chair McQuaid?
No.
Chair Dietzick?
No.
Senator Anderson?
Yes.
Senator Barr?
Aye.
Senator Carlson?
No.
Senator Swedzinski?
Nope.
Senator Jaskowski?
Aye.
Senator Fateh?
No.
Senator Gustafson?
No.
Senator Jasinski?
Aye.
Senator Curran?
Yes.
Senator Lang?
Aye.
Senator Morrison?
No.
There being 6 yeses and 7 noes, the A12 is not adopted. Members, other discussion. Senator Barr. Okay. Okay. Senator Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I might have supported that amendment, but you dissed those signs that I think are hilarious, so Senator Jaskowski. So I just wanted to say that for the record.
Thank you, Senator Swedzinski. Senator Fateh? No. No more amendments. Okay. Senator Mohamed, would you like to offer closing remarks?
Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you so much for hearing my bill. And I appreciate the really productive conversation. You all brought important questions to the conversation, and I look forward to working with all of you. And, contrary to what my Republican colleagues believe, Minneapolis is a beautiful city, and I would welcome all of you to continue visiting it and keep talking about it in a good way.
Thank you, Senator Mohamed. Senate File 2026 is laid over. Next, we have Senate File 3250. Senator Herr, please make your way. Oh, please make your way. Welcome to our committee. Senator Herr, do you have any testifiers today?
I didn't see them
Okay.
at this moment. I'll try to give out as much information as I can or defend the bill.
Okay. Oh, I believe they're coming in right now.
Okay.
And Senator Herr, would you like to tell us about your bill first and then about the amendments?
Sure.
Okay. Please go ahead, Senator Herr.
Yeah, thank you, Chair McQuaid, and also thank you to Senator Chair Dietzick, who scheduled my bill here to be heard today. Senate File 3250 is the open bidding bill for the DMV. We have about 200 DMV and DLA in a different part of our state providing service, registering title for motor vehicles, watercrafts, snowmobiles, and ATVs, and renewing driver licenses. the public and private proprietor of DMV deputy registrar and driver license agent service are about the same amount. Currently, when DMV or DLA office closes permanently, the previous partner, other owners, manager, or employees of the closed location sometimes receive preference in a closed bidding process. So Senate File 3250 offers transparency and fairness to the process. And this bill requires DPS to have an open bidding process when a deputy registrar or driver license agent closes their office location, and must adopt transparency rules to administer the open bidding process. So simple as that, Madam Chair. And I do have like 2 amendments in front of coming through. I have the A5 amendment. I have a copy here. If you don't, you don't, I do. You do? Okay.
It seems that we have copies up here. We'll get those passed out to the committee. Senator Hurd, do you want to describe what the A5 does?
And
Oh, it's in our, hang on.
Ms. Joan White can explain. It's just language, changing the language to be more clear, I suppose.
A technical amendment. Members, any questions about the A5 amendment? Okay. Senator Jasinski moves the A5 amendment. I'll wait for everybody to get a copy before we move. Senator Hurd?
Madam Chair, I also, caught my eye that Senator Jasinski and Senator Morrison are here. They are a member of our Transportation Committee too, so they're welcome to speak. And Senator Lane, 3 members. So they're welcome to speak in support of this bill.
Well, Senator Morrison, Senator Jasinski, and Senator Lang, you are welcome to speak in favor of this bill. Okay, so we have the A5 before us. Members, any questions about the amendment? Senator Jasinski, okay. All right, all those in favor of the A5, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The A5 is adopted. Senator Hurd, do I have it correct that there's also an A4 amendment?
There's an A4, and I don't have a copy with me, but I can
We will
explain the A4 amendment.
explain your A4 while we get copies passed out.
The A4 amendment mainly say that if the location that's closed, the physical location that's closed or not continue or are not open, the new owner can seek to open in the nearby vicinity.
Members, do you have the A4? No. We will pause while we wait for the A4. Does this have remnants of judiciary for anybody? Are you feeling judiciary-ish?
Madam Chair?
Senator
While that's being
Jasinski.
distributed, can I have a question on it?
Absolutely, Senator.
So I
Jasinski.
just want to make sure I understand. So in this instance, we have basically regions or areas where one picks up. So you're saying if one closes and nobody decides to reopen that, the neighboring agents or the neighboring deputy register owner could take over that region? Is that what you're saying?
Senator Hurd.
Senator Jasinski, just the retail physical location, if that's not available to be open, that the new owner could open next door to it, or just in nearby blocks.
Senator Jasinski.
I can have, now I have testifier here with me, so they can maybe say in the transportation Sure. lingo. I'd love to have Director Young come up and explain that one.
Experts to the stand, please introduce yourself for the record, and then you may answer the question.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Pong Zhang, Director of the Driver and Vehicle Services Division, and Senator Jasinski, the intention here would be that if that deputy registrar or DLA office were to close, and for some reason the lessor of that building were not willing or you weren't able to get into that building, this amendment allows a bidder to select a different location that's in the same county. And the intention there is that so that we can have the county be supported still, while not having to be specifically locked into that single location.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Senator Hurd.
along those lines, so the same county So you just described on the Ely, which happens to be St. Louis. So there are no other requirements of need and population or some parameters besides county?
Mr. Zhang.
Madam Chair, Senator Grant, correct. That is our intention to allow for the same county to be for a bid. There are rules there are Minnesota rules that apply to the geography and transaction requirements for a new office. The intent here is that this would be a replacement office. And I think that's part of the rulemaking process that we'll have to identify how we evaluate bids and their location to the existing closing office.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Senator Grant.
Just one last follow-up is that, that sounds good, but yeah, it's not a new office, but it could be detrimental to the existing office that's struggling where you just moved next to because it's right across county lines. And so that, to me, is problematic, to not have some protections, or I haven't seen the amendment yet, but to not have protections in it for those existing businesses, we're just going to compound the problem. So I like the overall piece of it, I really do, because we will likely be back here trying to figure out how to beg entities to do this service in the future as automation picks up and many things we can do. But for the real core licensing, we're going to struggle to keep that expertise regionally available and accessible without our taxpayers having to work harder and harder to comply with state laws. Remember, we work for them. They don't work for us. And so I would like to see some protections in it that from a proximity, that there's a little more thought to it than just somewhere in the county, because it's going to have the same impact on that corresponding or the adjacent deputy registrars if they move in close proximity, because there's a greater population center that they could peel off business, thus further hampering an existing business. So I think work would need to be done. A county is not enough of a definition to allow that moving. I get the physical site, but to move further than within a county, and you picked one that currently is a massive county. So hopefully you can fix that. Thanks.
Okay, before us, does every member have a copy of the A4? Okay, Senator Lang.
Just one question. I think we're going to need this has been a pretty bipartisan issue that we worked with the director on in Transportation Committee quite often. I don't disagree with the intent of the amendment, but I think possibly what we should do is open it up a little bit more to kind of go along with what Senator Coran is saying. And I don't know if you'd be open to some sort of an oral amendment. I'm probably going to get these guys involved in just a second here, but maybe have the discretion of the agency or the commissioner that whatever the circumstances may be with these offices in the locality, because they're so varied throughout the state, that maybe we should open that up a little more than just saying the county.
Senator Herr?
Senator Lane and also Senator Coran too. I'm open for amendment or any ideas. This amendment was a recommendation from the agency, and so I think if we allow the agency to develop rules to govern that, that might be one way to go. But whether we want to name it, I'll let the agencies to see if that's needed.
Senator Lang, you're going to work on your oral amendment. Do you want me to go to the next person?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Senator Gustafson.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know if this is yours or mine. Thank you. I just have a question about, and maybe this answers some of the things, and if not, I'm sorry, but it's a genuine question I had about this bill anyways. So I live in Ramsey County. We have a very, very nice White Bear Lake DMV. It's won awards. Everybody should stop by, except for don't, because it is now too full, mostly because Maplewood had to shut down. And I think it was end of last session, and we got a ton of phone calls about this. I'm wondering if this bill is sort of in response to that a little bit, but both in Ramsey County, and what happened is within a vicinity, they're maybe 10 miles apart, maybe. But when Maplewood shut down and didn't let anybody know, literally people just showing up and there was just a sign and doors were closed, they all had to go to White Bear Lake, and that created an already very busy DMV to have people sort of lined up around all the way down to Cup and Cone, another great place in White Bear Lake. But I would just say that
wonder if that might address some of the concerns. Like in Ramsey County, obviously, we have more people, and we're going to have more DMVs in closer areas, but this would allow somebody else to quickly expedite maybe the chances of opening up another DMV in Maplewood area without some of those things being in the way. And I don't know if this is sort of answering, I couldn't really follow along with what you were trying to ask, but if that is in response to this or not, does that address that problem?
Senator Her.
Senator Gustafson, I think we're trying to, we are kind of covering that problem, but not, it applies to that, but not, I might not be able to answer you, but I can give one reference to it that, and right now in some area, we have line of people using certain DMV. There are one in the Maplewood that's closed, one in South St. Paul that, still, have line of people overwhelming, but there's new DMV in my district, East Side St. Paul, that no one have heard about. And so that one is still, is struggling too at the same time. And so I know that struggling on DMV is across the board, but, there's some area, but this bill doesn't address that. This bill address like when there's one that's closing, we want it to be open for bidding and not the usual suspect who have the priority. That's the intent of the bill. But the amendment that we're in front of us now is trying to make sure that if the current physical location is not allowable, they can do it next door or across the block, so but within that vicinity. And I think it's the language talk about the county itself. So we're trying to figure out how we can make it fair and how can, and I think there is, if Mr. Sean can address that to see if the rulemaking process is good enough in addition to the amendment that I in front of you.
Mr. Zhang.
Madam Chair and Senator Gustafson, if I'll just add that in the Maplewood situation, we have Minnesota rules require us to have certain geography requirements for offices. And so when that office closed, because it was grandfathered in, it was well within 10 miles of multiple locations. And so it wasn't available to be reopened or bid on in any process. And so in that situation, if this bill were to have been available, this would have been an option where we could have leveraged that grandfathered location and found another viable candidate. In terms of the county restriction, our intent there is that obviously we to make this bill administrable for offices that close where we can't reuse that same location, we wanted to set a parameter for within a reasonable parameter for serving that same community. We selected county because again, our intention is to serve we believe the original intention of our deputy registrar ecosystem is to serve counties. And so that was the intention of that. I do think that there are a number of ways to identify vicinity, and that any definition would be applicable. And I do think we could address preference in rules, or we could identify restrictions right in statute. I think either vehicle would work.
Thank you. And Senator Cran, I'm going to go to Senator Lang for his oral amendment and then I'll come to you. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. I think we're kind of all on the same page here. I think, and Ms. James probably has the language set aside pretty well now. She did look up the statute the way it looked pretty quick there and looked it up. And I think she has an amendment that she can go through.
Ms. James.
Madam Chair and members, first I want to confirm that I checked the statute and the locations have to be approved by the commissioner. But so this will be a little bit belt and suspenders, but we'll also address the proximity issue that Senator Lang has raised on page, I think an amendment that would work to accomplish the idea is on page 1, line 4, delete everything after B and insert at a location that must be approved by the commissioner and must serve a similar service area as the existing office location. And then and then page 1, line 5, delete everything before the period. And then the same amendment on lines 1.8 and 1.9. So specifically on line 1.8, delete everything after B and insert
at a location that must be approved by the commissioner and must serve a similar service area as the existing office location. And then on page 1, line 9, delete everything before the period.
Thank you, Ms. James. Members, did everybody catch that? I'm seeing head nods. That's great. Senator Hur, would you like to react to that?
Yeah, that's an acceptable amendment. Thank you.
Members, discussion on the oral amendment to the A4 amendment. Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The oral amendment to the A4 amendment is adopted. Senator Drazkowski, further discussion on the A4 as amended. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator, Senator Drazkowski, I'm sorry. I was going to go to Senator Cran first, and then I will come to you. Senator Cran is good. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Hur, for the bill. Thank you for your work, Senator Lang and others. I think this language is really good. Senator Hur, you get the best bill of the day award from me. I really like this bill. It goes in a really good direction. I'd encourage you and Mr. Zhang to use as much flexibility as you can. I mean, the business owners and the customers will vote with their feet, and they will find a way to, the more prescriptive we are, the more we run into trouble. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. 2:30, market, best bill of the day.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All those in favor, we're going to adopt the A4 amendment. Did we already do that? We did that. Great. Okay. So, yeah, we just did the oral. Okay, I'm right. I still have my head. Okay, so we are going to adopt the A4 amendment as amended by Senator Lang's oral amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The amendment is adopted. The amendment as amended is adopted. Any other discussion on this bill?
Madam Chair.
Senator Jasinski.
Just a question that just came up. So thinking about it, and I know the deputy directors are having a difficult time in the last couple of years. I think they're starting to rebound. I get that. My frustration. And Director Zhang, I've talked to you this many, many times. We're pushing the simple transactions online, which makes it more and more tough for our offices to survive. And we're working on another bill. We'll hopefully get some fee sharing. I know you don't like that, but we're looking at some fee sharing and some other items. And mainly when a transaction starts online, can't be completed, they have to go to the local office. Now the local office will potentially be able to get paid for that. My question on this one is, so a lot of family businesses operate these units. So it's one generation to the next. It's a family-owned business, just like a shoe store or something like that. If they're transitioning and if they're transferring to a family member as part of that, just transition, okay, say the father owns it and the son's going to take over that business, does this not allow that then? Does this say you cannot do that? Because obviously family business could be a LLC or something like that. And again, my concern is like a family business is out there in the private side. Are we stopping that from happening by this bill or not? Maybe Director Zhang or Senator Hur?
Yeah,
Senator Hur.
From my reading of the bill, I don't think it doesn't involve, doesn't stop that. It's a LLC process of owning business.
Okay, and Director Zhang, can you confirm that, please, on record, so we have that again? I'm just trying to protect these businesses if they are transitioning from, a family business that the father owns and the son is running. He becomes the manager and at some point wants to own that thing. This will allow that to be transferred to that type of an entity.
Mr. Zhang.
Madam Chair and Senator Jasinski, I can confirm that office closure and an office transfer of an appointee are two separate transactions, and this situation would only apply when an office notifies DVS that they are intending to close and no longer operate.
Okay, thank you. Then I think I'll be with Senator Drazkowski. I believe this is the best bill I've seen today, so thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jasinski. And I hope that goes for a mother-daughter duo to transfer as well. Any other discussion?
Absolutely. My apologies, Madam Chair.
Okay, Senator Jasinski.
Any family member.
Okay, so any other discussion? Okay. Senator Hur, do you have any brief closing remarks before we move on?
I appreciate the support, and I will mark 230 down as the best bill ever. But Madam Chair, I commend you for being very descriptive about comments from your members and very supportive. I heard the words like earlier when I was waiting here. This is not about this bill, but when you said the succinct Senator Morrison, I just thought I want to keep that too. So there's, in addition to 230, I like to put that in my memory. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Her. Okay, with that, Senate File 3250 as amended is laid over on the table. All right. Next, Senator Latz, Senate File 3313. And we are going to start with Senator Dietzig's A3 amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the A3 amendment.
Thank you, Senator Dietzig. Do you want to,
I believe Senator Latz can explain the amendment.
Senator
For
Latz?
council.
Thank you. Senator Latz.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Senator Her set the bar pretty high for me to try to achieve here, but I am going to reach and see if I can do it. You have to understand the context of the underlying bill, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds of that and then tell you how the A3 fits in. In existing statute, there is a list of collateral consequences that people who are convicted of criminal offenses throughout Minnesota statutes would find themselves facing as a result of the conviction. So, for example, you're convicted of a DWI, you lose your driver's license. Not everyone knows that when they go into the process, but it is an element that they use to consider in deciding how to proceed with in resolving their matters in court. There are a lot of other pieces of dealing with that were in our original Senate File 3313, from disclosure requirements and certificates of rehabilitation and stuff like that, which proved to be too heavy a lift and had a substantial fiscal note. The A3 amendment drastically narrows this bill down. It eliminates everything in the bill except for the reviser's compilation of those collateral consequences in an easily accessible and understandable format, posted on the internet, so that individuals and their attorneys, where applicable, can find out that information so they can make better informed decisions when deciding how to proceed with cases. Also, putting it on the internet in the reviser's process makes it readily updatable, which is not the case with Chapter 609B, which now lists in statute collateral consequences, but which obviously were frozen in time as of the time that statute became law. So there's a big repealer at the back of the A3 amendment, which repeals all of that collateral consequences statute and leaves only the reviser's creation and updating of a collateral consequences compilation. So that's what the A3 amendment does to the entire bill.
Thank you, Senator Latz. Members, discussion on the A3 amendment. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The A3 is adopted. You don't have testifiers with you. This is a...
Just me, Madam Chair.
Okay. Members, discussion on Senate File 3313 as amended. Well, Senator Latz, you might win shortest bill of the day.
I'll take it.
Great. Senate File 3313 as amended is laid over. Thank you so much, Senator Latz.
Thank you very much.
Feeling very jaunty about that bill, Senator Fateh, Senate File 4316. Senator Fateh, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a moment, please.
Senator Fateh, is this your first stop?
I believe it'll be laid over, yes. This is my first stop, too.
Do you have an author's amendment you'd like to add before you begin?
So this is for...
Senate File 4316.
Yes, I do have the A3 amendments.
Is it the A3 or A2? It's
A3.
A3. Oh, that's right. It is the A3. And we will get that passed out to everybody. The A3 is an author's amendment. This is the first stop. I'll make sure folks have it and can see it, and then we'll take our vote.
While folks are getting it, would you like me to explain
Absolutely.
a little bit
Go
about
ahead,
the
Senator
A3? So it narrows the scope of the bill to make it apply only to non-conforming industrial uses, only to cities of the first class, and only to environmental justice areas as defined elsewhere in statute.
Thank you, Senator Fateh. All right. Folks have the A3 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Senator Fateh, your bill is in the order you would like it. Please talk to us about your bill and begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm honored to present and introduce SF 4316, which is a bill regarding amortization. Amortization is a tool that already exists in current statute and allows cities to phase out non-conforming properties for certain uses. For example, current statute enables cities to use it to shut down adult bookstores if they're non-conforming to the zoning they are in. Our testifiers today will elaborate further on about how the legal process for this works, amortization works. But the fundamental goal of this bill is to expand amortization as a tool that cities can use for polluting, industrial, non-conforming uses in environmental justice areas. This will give cities a tool to phase out dangerous and outdated industrial uses in areas that have suffered hugely, disproportionately from pollution in the past. With that, I'll pass it to our first testifier.
Please introduce yourself for the committee, and then you may begin.
Thank you, Senator May Quaid, committee members. My name is Melissa Lawrence. I'm a staff attorney for the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. This bill is about giving cities local control over where harmful industries may be located through a process called amortization. Amortization is a method of phasing out unlawful land uses over a long period of time by giving those uses an end date sometime in the future. According to constitutional case law, cities must provide the property owner enough time to regain their investment, accounting for the remaining useful life of the facility that's currently in that location, the value of the property, and depreciation. So depending on those factors, the end date could be in 2 years, or it could be in decades. But the point is that you're giving that land use some kind of an end date for a phase out. Otherwise, under the current statute, those land uses can remain forever, even if the property is sold to a new owner. We need this bill because under the current statute, cities have no power to correct outdated zoning decisions that are harming our most vulnerable communities. Historically, high-polluting industries have been concentrated in low-income communities of color during the same time period when our communities were segregated. At the time, we knew far less about the harmful effects of these industries. Tragically, today, we see cancer clusters and high asthma rates in these very neighborhoods that we have now classified as environmental justice areas of Minneapolis and St. Paul. For example, studies have shown high cancer mortality rates near the GAF shingle factory in North Minneapolis. And in my own neighborhood in St. Paul, I live just blocks from the Northern Iron Foundry, which is one of the highest lead emitters in the state. That foundry is right next door to homes where children are living. This is a huge concern in our neighborhood, where childhood blood lead levels are high. Even if Northern Iron comes into compliance with air pollution laws, which it's currently violating, we know it will still be emitting lead close to those homes, and there is no safe lead level for children. At a community meeting just last week, the owner of Northern Iron came right out and said, you would never build a facility like this in a residential neighborhood today, and he's right. No city would zone that way.
If you could, try to contain the summary of your comments.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, I'm here to answer any questions as well about how amortization works, but I want to emphasize that the reality is that pollution control laws are not designed to control these site-specific decisions. Those are decisions that are designed to be made by zoning and through zoning laws through a local process. And I'm happy to answer questions as well about what that process must look like. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, I have Councilmember Chowdhury. I don't see her. I'll move to the next person on my list, Allison Lind. And on deck is Roxanne O'Brien, who's joining us virtually, so we'll go to you shortly.
All right. Hi. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name's Allison Lind. I'm here today as a pediatric nurse and also as a mom to support Senate Bill 4316. I live in Minneapolis, just south of the East Phillips neighborhood. My 2-year-old son, who we use a lot of timers as well, Eli, goes to daycare across the street from Smith Foundry. Like many of the children who live, play, or learn in East Phillips, Eli has significant respiratory issues. Every common cold goes to his lungs. He's on multiple inhalers and medications and regularly sees a pulmonologist. Like many in the community, I have frequently reported odors and fumes coming from Smith Foundry to pollution control, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and 311. The responses from MPCA have been frustratingly inadequate. At a recent community forum, they told us that Smith releasing a small amount of lead into the neighborhood is okay, despite my knowing as a nurse that no level of lead exposure is safe, especially for young children. Moreover, despite repeatedly violating the Clean Air Act, Smith is allowed to continue to operate in the urban neighborhood of East Phillips across from a daycare as it's grandfathered in. This leaves community members like me desperate to protect our children, feeling powerless. Like many, I've lost sleep worrying about the potential effects of Smith's pollution on my son's health, and it's disheartening to know that the state's policy of protecting grandfathered industries like Smith shields them from real responsibility. I would hope that instead the state of Minnesota prioritize the health and well-being of our communities. Besides being a mom, I'm also the daughter of blue-collared workers, and I think some advocating for the shutdown of Smith do so out of fear of job loss for blue-collared workers. And this bill isn't about taking away jobs. It's about having businesses in our community that preserve the health of our community and of our workers. I support Senate Bill 4316 because it allows cities like Minneapolis to phase out polluting industries like Smith when they no longer conform to the underlying zoning code. So the protection of our communities, our kids, our workers should really be non-negotiable, and I hope the state supports that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
As a mom with a daughter with reactive airways and a frequent pulmonology appointment, I overstand, yes.
Super fun. Thank you.
Roxanne O'Brien, please come off mute, and you may introduce yourself for the committee. Kyle and Danielle, you're next on deck if you want to come sit at the table. Roxanne, go ahead.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing our communities an opportunity to speak about our concerns and our solutions. My name is Roxanne O'Brien, and firstly, I would like to say that I am coming to you as a mother, a community leader, a union member, and a job creator. I'm here before you today to speak about why passing this amortization bill would alleviate the inequities and public health concerns to start our state on a journey to healing, justice, and equity. For several decades, our communities, Black, Brown, Jewish, Indigenous, and poor white communities, have carried the brunt of the legacy of industrial pollution. We know that for decades and centuries that our communities and our lives have always been the ones to be sacrificed for the sake of profit by people who do not look like us or live in our communities. I myself have seen firsthand how companies such as Northern Metals, a metal scrapping business in North Minneapolis, got away with murder, literally, all in the name of jobs for a few. I promise you, there are better ways to create jobs. In fact, transitioning to a greener industry is even more profitable. It is a $1 trillion industry. But this company, Northern Metals, committed 9 felonies in the month of August of 2019 that we know of. And we would have never known of that if it weren't for the whistleblowers who admitted that this was happening. Northern Metals was a company that was never able to be held accountable. Not by the state, not by their permits, not by the courts, and not by the city. It took people like me, Black women and families, Indigenous people and poor white people, joining together with many other leaders in my community who stood up
and organize to get the truth out there to stop this corruption and this corporation from continuing to harm North Minneapolis.
Roxanne?
Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you. If you want to just wrap up your remarks.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Unfortunately, we couldn't shut it down. It moved to Becker. It burned for 5 days. But our community has brought to you solutions today. And we are asking you to bring back this tool that we had before companies took it away, so that our cities can actually work on decreasing the industrial pollution. As of now, we don't have that. This is a bipartisan, this is a bill that I think Republicans and Democrats both can agree on, because this is about air and water and earth that we all use together.
Thank you so much.
I will just say, as you know, asthma and disease, cancer are hurting our neighborhoods, but even harder in Black neighborhoods. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your advocacy. Next, we have Kyle, and I apologize, I'm calling everybody by their first name. If you can let me know what title you'd like, if it's Ms., Mrs., Dr., Judge, whatever, and I will call you by that when I refer back to you. So please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Kyle Makarios, and I'm here on behalf of the Teamsters Joint Council 32. The Teamsters represent thousands of workers in production, processing, and industrial facilities located in cities of the first class. We are strongly opposed to this bill. There's nothing more important to the Teamsters than making sure that our members have safe places to work and safe communities to live in. And I and our Teamster representatives have been in every single public meeting in the past year about the Smith Foundry in South Minneapolis. If this bill is about the Smith Foundry, it is dramatically overly broad. There is no requirement in this bill that a facility be found to be in violation of pollution standards. It treats all production, processing, and industrial facilities the same as we treat adult use venues, and is something we don't want in our communities. But committee members, Madam Chair, we do want production, processing, and industrial facilities in our communities, including in cities of the first class. Madam Chair, I've been a part of many conversations with legislators and social justice activists over the years who are sincerely interested in increasing the opportunity for good, union, blue-collar jobs for people who live in the core cities, for people of color, for new immigrants, for formerly incarcerated people. But pushing good union blue-collar jobs out of the core cities is the exact wrong approach to take if we want to make these opportunities available or increase the racial diversity of our unions. Finally, Madam Chair, what happens to workers at these facilities when these properties are amortized? This bill takes care of the business owners when their projects are phased out, but the workers end up on the street. Any decision of this magnitude should be made by regulators with the expertise to determine whether or not there's a serious threat to human health, and should not be made by a political body like a city council. We strongly encourage a no vote on this bill. Thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next, we have Danielle. And on deck, we have Tony. If you want to come down. Danielle, please begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Danielle Swift, and I'm a mother of 4 who has lived on the east side of St. Paul since I moved to Minnesota in 1998. I have grown up here and have started raising my own family, and I love my community. My 15-year-old daughter has struggled with chronic asthma for almost her whole life. She had her first asthma attack when she was 3 and had her last flare-up that landed her in an emergency room when she was 11. She still has asthma triggers that compromise her breathing. We have lived between 2 foundries in St. Paul for her whole life, and both of those foundries are currently under scrutiny for violating permits and regulations. As a young mother, I was just dealing with the issue as it came, and it was always an emergency situation. The only thing I could think about in those moments were taking care of my baby and making sure she could breathe. Since then, I have learned so much about how lead and other pollutants can cause asthma, cancer, and more. I have also learned about how our cities work and how decisions are made, and I was made aware of the reality that people make decisions for us, and sometimes our health and lives are not taken into consideration or prioritized over profit-churning businesses. This angered me as a mother and has activated me as a community organizer and an activist. We must show up and be present to be seen when decisions that impact our community are made. We must gather our courage, be bold, and champion our own changes as well. That's why I'm here today. I recognize that your decisions have a direct impact on the health,
quality, and overall well-being of my children's health and lives, and I'm sure you all recognize this as well. The amortization bill could make room for new green businesses and a healthy, sustainable workforce for future generations. It's a doorway, not a wall. It would add a layer of protection to our air, water, and to us as a people. Thanks so much for your time to testify. Please vote yes to pass Senate File 4316.
Thank you so much. And I'll just ask folks again to just remind me when you begin your testimony how you'd like me to address you. That'd be great. Thanks. Please begin.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Tony Quillis, and I'm the Director of Environmental Policy at the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. And Tony or Mr. Quillis, Senator, would be great, Madam Chair. But thank you for the opportunity to make a couple of comments on Senate File 4316. I'd like to start out by thanking Senator Fateh for the A3 amendment. As this bill was introduced, it had statewide impacts, and now it has been limited down to the cities of the first class within environmental justice areas also. So we're thankful for the A3. But that being said, Madam Chair and members, we still have grave concerns about this legislation. As we try and grow our economy and foster economic development, create jobs here in the state, this creates great uncertainty for businesses that are trying to locate in these areas that are defined. Especially if you're going to try and grow your business and create more jobs, this really creates an uncertainty. And let me give you an example. If you wanted to create more jobs and grow your business in one of these areas that have been designated and approached a financial institution for a loan to create more jobs, that financial institution is going to give pause and more than likely reject your loan application because of the uncertainty that you're in that facility, and any change of a simple ordinance could put you out of business. And so there's concern there, and it could affect such facilities as a woodworking facility, a body shop, even a brewery. And because of the definition of industrial being so broad, I think it could include potentially a wastewater treatment plant or a hospital. So, Madam Chair, thank you for the ability to make some times. And finally, I just make some comments. Final point I just wanted to make is this is going to create a patchwork, even within those designated areas, and create inconsistency and uncertainty, and I think hinder economic development here in these areas. So, Madam Chair and members, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Quillis. Justice Jones, please come forward. And next on deck is Elizabeth Wrigley Field. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Let me know how you'd like me to address you, and you may begin.
My name is Justice Jones. You can just address me as Miss. I want to be clear that this is not a Smith Foundry bill, but one to protect exploited people and exploited stolen land. That our concern is not woodworkers, but heavy polluters. My name is Justice Jones. I'm a 25-year-old. I was born in North Minneapolis, a place that is a cancer cluster due to the exorbitant number of major pollution facilities located in the area. A place where this cancer cluster was created on purpose, and we see the proof of it in old redlining maps that label my communities and the people that reside there as less desirable. A place where a European corporation can purchase land for $1, land that they make 25% of their profits on, while we suffer from respiratory illnesses, high rates of cancer, skin and eye issues, and pay rent at up to $1,800 for a one-bedroom. A place where community members can undergo a decade-long fight to remove major polluters, all for Northern Metals to move to another community and burn for 5 days, requiring 500 million gallons of water to put out, only for the land, our only access to the river, to be bought by yet another industrial company. A place where they will ask my community what they want to see along the Mississippi River, giving us hope for what we could finally have at the Upper Harbor Terminal, only to have it ripped from our hands by people who have no concern or regard for those who inhabit the area. I often hear people speak about racism, classism, and white supremacist structures as if they are a thing of the past, when in my own lifetime I have seen it. It permeates the very nature of our world like a disease that hides within cells. It becomes so normalized that it often goes unnoticed by those who benefit from its privilege or make money off of it. Our communities have fought tooth and nail for what we have accomplished, and we are exhausted by the constant battle, and you have the power to make it easier. We've even given you a blueprint for how to make it easier through this bill, and we've given you the opportunity to check your privileges and power and to use them for the benefit of the greater good. I left folks with this question at the last hearing for this bill, and I urge you to consider it again. When asked what you did with your position to make the world a better place for those who came after you, what will be your response?
Perfect timing, Ms. Jones. Thank you so much. Next, Elizabeth Wrigley-Field.
Hi, Dr. Wrigley-Field is fine. I live downwind of Smith Foundry, and I live at the edge of Minneapolis's South Side Green Zone. I'm also raising a 2-year-old who's been breathing Smith's emissions since she was conceived. And finally, I'm a population health researcher. I'm an associate professor and McKnight Presidential Scholar at the U. And I've watched over years the direction of research be absolutely unequivocal. We think that air pollution is bad, but we learn over and over and over again that it's much worse than we thought. For lungs, for brains, for hearts, and especially for pregnant people, children and babies, elders, and anyone who's exposed to a lot of other sources of pollution, which means that the location of Smith Foundry is one of the worst locations that I could possibly conceive of. When science advances and we come to understand that something is dangerous in a way that we hadn't realized before, our cities should have the power to update their zoning to reflect that new information. You've heard here from the Teamsters, but one group that we haven't heard from is the group of people that have worked at this OSHA-violating facility and no longer do because of how it's impacted their health. But that's a group of families that we have heard from, families of those workers at some of our community forums with the PCA. This facility is a disaster, and Minneapolis should have the right to make it conform to modern zoning. Foundry work should happen in modern, updated facilities that are not located in environmental justice neighborhoods, and this bill is about allowing that to happen. I hope you will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wrigley-Field. Next, I have Joe Vital, or Vital, or another variation that I did not pronounce correctly. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Let me know how you'd like me to address you, and you may begin.
Vital, you were really close though, and Joe is just fine. Thank you so much. My name is Joe Vital. Anin, Wajin Wiju Adijina Kaz. My spirit name is also Southern Mountain. I'm an enrolled member of the Red Lake Nation, and I'm coming to you, speaking to you as an uncle. And although I live in the Powder Run area, I have family that live in the Little Earth community that's located less than half a mile from a legal non-conforming facility. And for decades, we have been complaining about the issues involving smell as well as opacity that we see coming, meaning dark smoke stemming from that facility. And what we have seen is just our state and our city just tied, unable to move forward, especially as new economies and new industries become available. I appreciate the Chamber of Commerce being here talking about loans, but this is a neighborhood that's been divested from. It's really hard to put a business in our neighborhood knowing that we have a facility that is violating EPA standards as well as OSHA. Nobody wants to put their business in our neighborhood knowing there's something harming it. And what we're asking for is a path forward. Not every city of the first class is going to start coming for its workers. Some have zoning codes that it needs to enforce, and we should enable cities to do so that communities like Little Earth can breathe better and live better. And that's what I have to say. Miigwech.
Thank you, Joe. And last but certainly not least, Representative Karen Clark. Representative Clark, welcome to the committee. I'm so happy to see you. You may begin. Introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. It's really an honor to be here, be back in this kind of work, very important work, justice work that I had the privilege of doing for, I guess it was 43 years before 38 years before I left. And I wanted to come today and really support Senate File 4316. It's close to my heart. The neighborhood where I did live myself for about 43 years. And Senator Fateh, thank you for bringing this forward. The people who live in this neighborhood have suffered long enough. And basically what we're talking about doing here is an environmental justice strategy to give local control back to a city so that it can protect a very vulnerable neighborhood from the kind of pollution that would not be allowed in many other parts of our state. Local control is a tool that I think many of you think is important. And so I can tell you, I had this type of bill in 2017, and at that time, the city of Minneapolis did not support it. My understanding is that they're not opposing it now, and that it is a tool that is needed to try to bring back some protections to this neighborhood. A majority of people of color, low-income people, Native people, who have double the times of occurrences of asthma, heart disease, cancer, many other problems that are related to environmental pollution, as the physician was describing a little bit earlier. So I asked you, please help us return that local power to our city of Minneapolis. It would mean a lot, and it will definitely help with the problems that we have with public health, with jobs. I think one of the things that was said about uncertainty, and that Joe Vitale just pointed out, that it's important for businesses to know that the laws will be enforced in terms of occupational health and safety and in terms of air pollution. That's a very important certainty that we can offer to businesses and to job seekers. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to invite your expert testifier back forward, and I want to apologize for not letting you finish your expert testimony and putting you on the 2-minute timer. If there's additional pieces you'd like to have said, please feel free to do that, and then we can move to member questions and conversation.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Quaid, committee members. I was just going to finish up with some more information about the process, if that's all right. I'm sure you all have questions about that. So I kind of picking up where I left off, we do have pollution control laws in place, right? But those laws are designed as blanket laws. Pollution control laws are not designed to address decisions about where things are located and how a city should be arranged. So zoning law is designed to address these site-specific issues. And in zoning, we actually do understand that certain facilities, even industrial facilities, have value, right? These industries are needed, but they shouldn't be located in residential neighborhoods or near vulnerable populations. And those are the kinds of decisions that can be made at the local level. I also want to emphasize, this is a point that could get lost pretty easily, but this does not mean that any facility would immediately shut down. Amortization is a process. And actually, when you hear the word amortization, you might think of a loan, right? Like your mortgage. And so in the financial context, that means you're paying something off gradually over time. And it's actually a similar concept when it comes to zoning. You're providing time for that investment to be regained. So it's not an immediate process. There is a process that has to be provided at the local level. And if due process is not provided and that time period is not reasonable, the court will strike down the amortization ordinance. So the length of time really is a local site-specific decision. It's a fact-specific determination. That's why it's best made at the local level, because the local city council can work with the affected landowners and determine what's going to be a reasonable period of time given their financial situation, given the status of that business. And as we've noted before, the current statute does already allow this process to take place for adult-only businesses, so this is not really something new in the law. However, I would say that if we're concerned about adult-only businesses, we should also be concerned about industries that can create cancer and cause neurological problems in children. So this would fix that discrepancy. And I'm happy to help answer any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And would you just remind me how you'd like me to address you?
Ms. Lawrence is fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Member questions? Senator Barr.
Since nobody else wants to jump into the fray, many of your testifiers or people that testified said that they had one specific business in mind that they testified against, and it was the foundry. I forget the exact name of the foundry, the owner, but the Smith Foundry. And they talked about how the foundry was in violation of EPA and OSHA laws consistently. Well, if they're in violation of those laws consistently, why do we have those agencies is kind of my question. I know that doesn't actually pertain to our committee because we don't control the EPA or OSHA, but if those agencies aren't working, why do we even have them is basically my question. So are those actually, do they actually have violations or is it perceived violations?
Ms. Lawrence.
Thank you, Senator McQuaid, Senator Barr. You do make a good point in that we're not seeing these pollution control laws enforced consistently. However, even where they are enforced, we do still see health effects because the pollution control laws are designed with a bigger picture in mind. They're not designed to address what kind of facilities should be right next to each other. And when the EPA or the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency is designing their laws, they're trying to design laws that are going to apply across the state. There are some exceptions to that, but generally that's how our pollution control laws work. So that's why we do need to address this through zoning.
Senator Barr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So follow-up to that would be, right, so basically the foundry was, when it was built, it was within all of the EPA rules, it was within the proper zoning and everything else, and there was mention of putting green industries in here, which I'm assuming would be more like solar panels and things like that. Well, solar panels are built with some very hazardous chemicals as well, or minerals as well, like lithium and cobalt, cancer-causing agents there. So I guess the question would be 20 years from now or 25 or 30 years from now as we see if we use this amortization to intentionally put some kind of a green industry in here, which also uses cancer-causing minerals, would we come back in 25 years and use this same amortization to say, now we can't have this here anymore? And I'm just trying to look long-term because this is something that should have been probably looked at before, but we didn't have all the information, and the laws got put into place because we wanted a foundry, and then we put houses around it so you could walk to work, blah, blah, blah. You can see where the progression started from and how we got here, and just because we want to use this tool of moving an industry out of a residential area or next to a residential area, I just want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for the same thing 25 years from now.
Ms. Lawrence.
Chair McQuaid, Senator Barr, I know that from working with the city of Minneapolis on zoning decisions, that this is something that they are accounting for in determining what new uses can come in. So I think cities are becoming a lot more thoughtful about what is allowed and taking into consideration public health in ways that they didn't previously, early in the century, mid-century, or I should say the 20th century. So I think a lot of those problems are headed off. I would also say that it's highly unlikely that a facility that's built today could be amortized out in 20 years. If it's a high-tech facility, the value of the property being relatively new property would have to be taken into consideration. So I think realistically that's unlikely to occur. I do want to mention too, in response to your earlier question, that I know there are other facilities of concern besides Smith Foundry. So there are a lot of testifiers here today about Smith Foundry, and I know that is a core concern. But there are other foundries in the Twin Cities that have been of concern as well, one being the Northern Iron Foundry in St. Paul on the east side, which is also an environmental justice neighborhood, as well as some testifiers spoke about facilities in North Minneapolis that have created cancer clusters there. So I just want to make sure that's clear to the committee as well.
Great. Member questions? Senator Jasinski.
Madam Chair, the one thing I've noticed today is we use local control to how we want to benefit the bill, because in one bill we're taking it away, and one bill we're giving it into action. So this one, you say you want local control, but Senator Fateh, your next bill is going to take it away. So I get frustrated when the word local control comes up. I was a mayor, I was on city council for many years, and that local control seems to swing whichever way you want to use that term. It's pretty loosely right now, because again, one bill you're saying you want local control, the next bill we're going to hear you want to take it away. So I just want to make that comment. It's kind of ironic. My concern, and again, we all want safety. I understand that portion of it, but as part of this, I mean, you have to look at highest and best use of land. And if you are a property owner, and let's say industrial commercial is at $3 per square foot for land and residential is $1 per square foot, in this instance, you're taking property away from a property owner and not compensating them for that. It can be done over time, but if your industry or your commercial building is worth this much, and now you want to switch it to a different use, you're taking the value away from that landowner. And additionally, another bill, again, it's a little ironic, Senator Port had a bill where she wants to put housing areas in industrial areas, and this kind of conflicts with that. Now you want to take the industry out. So we're seeing some conflicting things here. Again, I get the safety, but it gets a little frustrating. Watch, it goes back and forth to how you want it to be, to your opportunity to do it, not what's the best. So I just want to make that comment. Again, you're taking land away from an owner. You're devaluing the land cost by doing this and not compensating the property owner for that. So thank you.
Senator Fateh, did you? Oh, all right. Further member commentary? Okay. We are laying this bill over. Senator Fateh, I want to thank you for bringing this. I think I get like a lot of emails about my infertility bill, and I get a lot of emails with the READ Act, and I also get a lot of emails about your bill. And so about this bill in particular, I want to thank you for bringing it forward, and I want to thank the testifiers. I want to make sure that we're not ending talking about land use, but really a lot of people came forward and shared stories about their children's reactive airways and, cancer clusters. And I want to be really mindful that people's health has to be one of our top priorities. And I think we heard that loud and clear from folks today. And it sounds like there are some cities who are really wanting to figure out how to prioritize the health of their citizens. So I appreciate you bringing this bill forward. Do you want to make any closing remarks?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much to Leader Dizek, Chair Dizek, for allowing us to have this bill heard, and for the members for hearing this bill. We heard from a lot of community members that had this ongoing concern, that's speaking to this for years, and now we finally got some legislation to address this. We heard from folks, and both from north side and the south side, about polluting entities such as the Northern Metals or the Smith Foundry being in my district. Time and time again hearing from members talking about, as my friend Joe spoke about, the smell that they're experiencing, or the black smoke, and the high rates of asthma and lung cancer and brain issues and heart issues. And we just want to make sure that we do something about it, because this has been a problem, especially in areas that affect communities of color. So thank you.
Thank you. And with that, Senate File 4316 is laid over on the table. And that brings us to our final bill, which is also yours, Senator Fateh, Senate File 3572. And this is your first committee stop. You have an A1 amendment. Do you want to move that amendment and get the bill in the shape you'd like it before we discuss?
Yes, let me find the bill really quick also.
All right. So Senator Fateh moves the A1 amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The A1 is adopted. The bill is in the order you like it. Senator Fateh, please begin.
Thank you so much. So the A1 amendment just added the sections 1 and 2, the homeowner association pieces. I'll speak to the parking piece, and then I'll let my friend Senator Rasmussen, who helped a lot with this, speak to the second part. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very pleased to introduce Senate File 3572, which would eliminate minimum parking mandates in Minnesota. And if this is passed, we will turn Minnesota into a true leader on housing affordability and small business viability. For those who aren't familiar, a minimum parking mandate is a requirement that whenever someone builds a new building or renovates an old one, they are forced to build a certain number of parking spots, whether they need them or not. These mandates are often arbitrary. For example, there's 2 suburban cities in Minnesota that regulate bowling alleys. In Carver, for every bowling lane a bowling center has, they have to have 2 parking spots. And in Anoka, for every bowling lane, they have to have 7 parking spots. So there's 2 spots per bowling lane in one city and 7 in another one. And bowlers are not driving 3.5 times as much in Anoka as they are in Carver. These mandates often also force people to build far more parking than they need. And they're especially burdensome to renters. According to the census, 48% of renter households in Minnesota have 1 car, and 19% of renter households have no cars at all. So for 67% of Minnesota renter households, they have either 1 car or 0. But the large majority of cities in Minnesota have mandates that require between 1.5 and 2.5 spots per unit. So they're essentially mandating a lot more parking than renters need. Those parking spots are expensive. The average parking spot in Minneapolis costs well over $40,000 to build. And that cost gets passed on in the form of higher costs for rent, goods, and services. But when people have the ability to decide for themselves how much parking they need, they can save a lot of money. A renter can save between $200 and $300 per month if they have 1 less parking spot. Parking mandates also often make projects completely impossible. For example, in my district, there was a vacant church that announced it is going to convert its building into affordable housing. That project would have been completely impossible if Minneapolis hadn't eliminated minimum parking mandates, because there would have been nowhere to add all of the parking. Parking mandates also cause more driving because they make destinations further apart, because there's so much extra parking taking up space in between. When buildings are closer together, like say in a small downtown Main Street, it is a lot easier to walk. I want to be clear about what this bill does and does not do. This bill does not prohibit people from building new parking spaces if they want to. It does not mandate the removal of any existing parking. But what it does do, it is allow entrepreneurs, builders, customers, and tenants to decide for themselves how much parking they require at their homes, their businesses, and destinations. Some people are going to oppose this bill because they don't want cities to lose local control over this issue. But to that, I would say that cities have only ever had the authority to enact zoning laws because the state delegated the power to them in the 1920s. From the start, the state has always set parameters on how they could enact those zoning laws, and we have adjusted those parameters over time. It is entirely appropriate for us to adjust those parameters once again to respond to 2 of the greatest crises of our time. The housing affordability crisis and the climate crisis. Minimum parking mandates are terrible for both. We need our policies to focus more on building more housing for people and not more housing for cars. People come to this issue for a lot of very different perspectives. For me, the biggest reasons I care about this issue are because of housing affordability and climate action. But many of my friends on the other side of the aisle are also strongly supportive of it because they care about things like property rights, free markets, and libertarian values. So let me highlight the fact that this bill is 100% a libertarian bill. We are saying that individual property owners are the ones who are best positioned to determine how much parking they need, and not governments. I very much want this to be a bipartisan bill. So with that goal in mind, I've been working with Senators Rasmussen, Draheim, and Lucero. Working with them, we have drafted the A1 amendment. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd like to bring forward Senator Rasmussen to speak on that piece as well.
Senator Rasmussen, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Fateh. As a conservative, I believe in property rights, free market principles, and limited government. And the proposals before the committee today are pro-property rights and pro-free market, and are going to help reduce the cost of housing and building across Minnesota. One of the big issues that I hear about in the area I represent, especially from young families, is the increased cost of housing and the challenge that they have to get into housing and to purchase their first home. And that's been driven by general inflation, it's been driven by higher interest rates, but it's also been driven by local government mandates that have a big impact on that cost of that new starter home. And so today, I'm going to talk about a portion of the amendment that relates to prohibiting local units of government from requiring homeowners associations or HOAs for new development as a condition of getting a residential building permit. This is actually taking portions from Senate File 1370, which was a bill that Senator Port has been working on. I want to be clear, this will still allow developers and people to create HOAs if they want to, but it would prohibit cities from saying that they have to create an HOA and include certain language in their bylaws that can add cost to housing. Today, municipalities can use HOA mandates, for example, to require aesthetic mandates. This could be a certain type of more expensive siding, a certain size garage, or other anti-property right mandates. And I also believe that these aesthetic mandates can result in economic redlining, where we effectively say that you have to have a certain level of wealth or income to live in an area or to build a home in an area because of those aesthetic mandates. Today, municipalities also use HOA mandates to push costs onto new development. An example that has been used recently is a city was requiring a new development to pay for the cost of snow removal for an affiliated city park in order for them to get permission to be able to build. And so those are adding costs and barriers onto new housing development. And so, Madam Chair, really appreciate the opportunity to work on a bipartisan basis with Senator Fateh on this bill and to speak in support of the provisions today.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. We have several testifiers. We are going to start with Libby Murphy. If you can come forward, introduce yourself, tell me how you'd like me to address you, and you may begin. And Rick Varco, you're on deck. You can, Senator Rasmussen, are you going to stay at the table? That is more than fine. I just don't want to keep inviting people up. Okay, great. We'll just do one at a time. Libby Murphy, you're up.
My name is Libby Murphy. I'm the Director of Policy at the Minnesota Housing Partnership. Libby is fine. Minnesota Housing Partnership provides direct technical assistance to rural communities and tribal nations here in the state of Minnesota as well as nationally. We produce original research on housing trends in Minnesota, and we advocate for housing policies and resources that ensure people have access to dignified, healthy, and affordable housing. Parking mandates unnecessarily increase the project costs, which increases overall housing costs. Parking mandates are often based on the size of the building or number of bedrooms rather than the actual number of vehicles owned by occupants, which is rarely adjusted for demographics, geographies, and economic factors. Often cities are requiring 2 parking spaces per unit, despite the developer anticipating some of those spaces will be underutilized. The cost for structured parking can range from $10,000 to $50,000 per space. Developers of market rate housing will pass this cost on to residents. Affordable housing developers have no way to pass on this cost, and it is often subsidized by the state and at the expense of building more units. And in greater Minnesota, where we can command less in rents, but it costs the same amount to build a project, we also have you can't pass those costs on as easily. And to be clear, renters in market rate housing are experiencing unprecedented levels of housing cost burden. These parking mandates are regressive because lower income households who are most likely to experience housing cost burden, which is half of all renters in the state of Minnesota, they pay a greater portion of their income towards parking than higher income households. Despite having lower vehicle ownership rates, only 16% of car owners make less than $50,000 or less. Not only is it regressive, it also means that lower income households occupying fewer parking spaces are subsidizing unused asphalt. Mandates incentivize luxury and more expensive unit configurations because these projects can more easily pass on the costs, as I said. This drives rents not only in the building, but across the system. Eliminating minimums does not eliminate parking. Developers conduct extensive market research. Beacon, a nonprofit housing developer, and other nonprofit housing developers, they study their existing portfolios and they understand their residents' vehicle habits better than planners and city council members. Beacon did a study in which they measured that only 26% of their mandated spaces were in use over a several-month period. And that same study concluded that eliminating those unnecessary mandated parking spaces would have resulted in $800,000 in savings, which could have resulted in multiple units of housing. And other developers will not build parkingless buildings if they cannot attract residents. It is market-driven. On-site, well, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
You can take a sentence or two to wrap up your remarks.
I was just going to say that this bill is a no-brainer. We are seeing other sectors and industries and lawmakers see the intersectionality between housing and other public policy goals that we want to achieve. And oftentimes, that's raising the cost of housing. This is an opportunity to reduce the cost of housing to unnecessary costs. We have underutilized parking spaces. And so I'd ask the committee to support the bill.
Thank you. Next is Rick Varco, and after that is Bradley Shapai. I might have pronounced that wrong. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Tell me how you'd like me to address you, and you may begin.
Chair May-Quaid and members of the committee, my name is Rick Varco. Rick is fine. I'm here to testify in support of Senate File 3572 on behalf of SEIU Healthcare Minnesota and Iowa. Our union represents 50,000 healthcare workers who work in hospitals, clinics, nursing homes, and self-directed home care. When we debate the proper role of government, the case for government power is strongest when the stakes are basic needs like health, education, safety, and prosperity. The case is weakest when the stakes are consumer preferences. Walkers, bus riders, minivan drivers, and delivery truckers all have different preferences for parking. The best way to reconcile their conflicts is to let them compete in the private market. Individuals and businesses should be able to build the parking they prefer on their land. Local communities should not be able to impose the preferences of some on everyone else. This is not an abstract debate for our members. For most working families, housing is their biggest family expense, but in too many places, housing costs are exploding. Union contracts with great pay can be undercut when your rent goes up faster. Housing costs more when local governments force people to pay for empty parking spaces they do not want or need. That is why the Minnesota AFL-CIO passed a housing resolution that, along with endorsing other policies, called for eliminating mandatory parking minimums. Many of our members choose to work at hospitals, clinics, and other major healthcare settings precisely because they are on reliable transit routes or easy to carpool to. This allows them to save on the cost of a car. They could save even more on rent, but only if they were allowed to find housing that did not include the extra costs created by government parking minimums. This bill makes housing more affordable for our caregivers. It fights climate change by reducing our dependence on cars and gas. It allows low-income and people of color more access to employers with the best job opportunities and communities that have the best public services. This is a bill where members of both parties can come together to support working families. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Bradley, I'm going to try a different way, Shappy. And after that is going to be Joshua Howdick. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Tell me how you'd like to address you, Mr., Miss, Doctor. That was a good catch earlier. And you may begin your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Bradley Sheppy, and thank you to the committee and Senators Fateh and Rasmussen. My name is Bradley Sheppy. I'm here today as an individual, as a former Minnetonka City Council member, and I'm here to speak specifically from a kind of on-the-ground suburban perspective, as well as some of my real estate expertise. I'm a real estate attorney, just from understanding the private market. I believe this is necessary deregulation, right? And basically what this will allow is the people who know their projects best, the demand best, the consumers best, they have the expertise to do what they need to do on the property side, and the cities to manage what they do well, which is manage the roads, where should there be no parking or no parking signs, where do they want to charge for parking, roadway widths, all those are absolutely in the city engineer's expertise. So first, one example, while I was in city council, we had a local Walzer huge car company. They came into a neighborhood, it was the ward that I'm in, and they proposed from a concept review, a surface parking lot with their new building for a Kia dealership. Well, the city code required them to have so many specific stalls based upon the building they wanted to do. And to meet the franchise, they had to have a certain building size. It couldn't be any smaller. So effectively, we got to a point where it almost didn't happen. The city required it to build a parking ramp. So instead of spending a modest amount on a surface parking, they had to build, the city wanted to build 4 stories. Ultimately, it settled for 3 stories, just a multi-million-dollar parking ramp that the neighbors didn't want, the developer, city didn't want, and we were already on a commercial road, which was signed no parking. So there wasn't really a risk of this bleeding elsewhere. So it was a frustrating, time-intensive experience to see that, why are we doing this? Beyond that, cities are already working through this tension, right, in the suburbs between new density, right, infill density, and existing neighborhoods and existing parking. Well, some of these, we already know in a lot of these apartment buildings. I'm sorry, thank you for your time, but
You just take like 10, 15 seconds, you can wrap up.
Sure, my
your
last
remarks,
point
yeah.
was that we already have tension where people charge developers and property owners to charge for parking spilling out onto streets potentially. And so that's already being managed between cities and private property owners on how that works, potentially just the cities deciding to not sign it. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Next, we have Joshua Howdick, and on deck is Henry Graybar. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Please tell me how you'd like me to title you when I address you, and you may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Joshua Hodak. You can address me by Joshua. Madam Chair, members, I'm the Senior Program Manager at the Sierra Club, the oldest and largest environmental advocacy organization in the state and the nation. This bill prioritizes common sense economics, people's property rights, and brings to light the true cost of parking for all of us. Our outdated government regulations currently mandate that private property owners and housing developers must build excessive parking that their customers don't necessarily want, parking that the market is not necessarily asking for. Consequently, our outdated government mandated parking minimums are resulting in some of our state's most valuable real estate being devoted to excessive car storage. These mandates require parking that exceeds what the market demands, because when these regulations are relaxed, we've seen developers use that freedom and they often build less parking. Building parking is expensive. Structured parking can cost up from $20,000 to $60,000 per spot, more than the cost of some new cars, certainly mine. Who pays for it? Well, we do in our rent checks and our mortgage payment. Excess car storage is not only expensive, it takes up space in our towns and cities, but it's also harmful for our environment and climate. Excess parking causes more pollution runoff, contributes to heat island effect, and hinders efforts to build more housing, increase transit options, and reduce climate change emissions. Like Senator Fateh said, this bill addresses not one, but 2 crises that face all Minnesotans, housing and climate. It's time to abolish unnecessary, expensive parking mandates for all Minnesotans. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Henry Graybar. After that is Sean Hayford O'Leary. And I'm not seeing.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can see you. Yes, please introduce yourself for the committee. Tell me how you'd like me to title you when I address you, and you may begin.
Hi there. My name is Henry Grabar. Henry is fine. I'm a journalist. I'm the author of Paved Paradise: How Parking Explains the World, and I'm a Loeb Fellow at the Harvard University Grad School of Design. Over the last year, I have traveled the country talking to many city politicians from cities large and small about parking minimums. You already know that they impede the construction of affordable housing, senior housing, the opening of restaurants, shops. In my book, I talked to a man who was trying to found a church, and he was unable to because of the parking requirements, which one of his members of his congregation told him might be a sign from God that they should look elsewhere to site the church. But of course, the parking minimums were not imposed by God. They were imposed by the city council. And today I want to address to you a reason why the state might work to preempt city councils at establishing these laws. And I think the state has a compelling interest in taking away these obligations that cities put on property owners to establish parking, in part because city politicians are structurally more likely to be concerned about the parking shortage than conscious of the challenges that face people who are trying to build new housing, open new businesses, renovate historic structures, etc. City politicians sometimes believe that they can provide exemptions to these laws on a case-by-case basis, but in practice, that does not provide enough flexibility for people to be able to undertake these projects. You are not leaving cities high and dry by taking away their right to impose these parking minimums on people. We have smarter ways to handle parking demand than demolishing half of downtown to create parking lots. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Daniel Harrigus, and after that is Sam Rockwell. I said Sean. I meant Sean. Sean Hainfer O'Leary, please, yes, come to the table, introduce yourself. Please tell me how I'd like to address you.
Thank you, Chair Mike and members of the committee. Sean Hayford O'Leary and Mr. Hayford O'Leary is fine. I'm a city council member in Richfield, and I previously served 6 years on the Richfield Planning Commission. The city of Richfield does not have a position on this bill, and I'm here as an individual. But my experience over the last 10 years as a suburban planning commissioner and city council member has led me to support a statewide ban on parking minimums. I believe in cities' ability to use planning and zoning to better their communities, but I also believe in recognizing that in some cases that approach has failed, and cities have really failed at managing parking appropriately. To see that, you really only need to compare the results of adjacent cities to see how arbitrary these rules are. You know, Senator Fateh gave a good example, but a local example to me, Richfield is 2 miles north to south. Obviously, the circumstances are pretty similar in the far south edge of Minneapolis to the north and the far northern edge of Bloomington to the south. If you build a 50-unit apartment building just north of our border, it needs 0 parking spaces in Minneapolis. In Richfield, it needs 60 parking spaces. In Bloomington, it needs 100 parking spaces for the same project. That is the same access to transit, the same density, the same age of development, totally different rules, totally different effect on the affordability of that building. The opposition to this bill will often contain claims like we need to give cities room to innovate, meet their local needs, et cetera. Well, we've been trying that for decades. This is the result. The same area of the metro, you see drastically different results and requirements. My experience as a city council member has also shown me how difficult it is to address these parking concerns on a purely local level. When we have public hearings on new developments, parking dominates the discussion. It's one of the top issues, and in fact, it almost drowns out everything else about the new project. Last year, I proposed elimination of parking minimums within Richfield, and I had our staff estimate the amount of staff work that would be required to address that on just a local level. Our staff did that, and they estimated 18 months of public process just for Richfield to do the engagement with the community to come up with a new local policy. Richfield staff don't have 18 months to spend on this, and I don't think that's unique to Richfield. Passing this bill will give cities a major boost, and it will give housing and small business a major boost as well. So I ask for your support, and thank you.
Thank you so much. Daniel Harrigus, as I'm guessing. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Tell me how you'd like me to title you when I address you, and you may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Daniel Harrigus. Daniel is just fine. I am the policy director at the Parking Reform Network. I'm also a St. Paul resident, and I'm also a longtime writer with Strong Towns, and the co-author of a book about the housing crisis with Charles Marone, the founder of Strong Towns. In my work at Strong Towns, which is an organization that focuses on local financial resilience, what we have found time and time again is that, especially in smaller communities, the areas of town that have a traditional pre-roughly World War II historic development pattern where you've got, I mean, think of a small town Main Street of the type that you can find hundreds throughout Minnesota. You've got buildings in a row lining the street. You've got retail on the ground floor. You've got what's known as missing middle housing, small scale multifamily housing. That pattern, those places produce an overwhelmingly disproportionate share of the tax base of the local wealth that sustains a community. We find this in place after place in small cities and big cities. Unfortunately, that pattern of development has suffered death by 1,000 cuts due to mandatory parking minimums more than any other one land use policy. They are the kiss of death. They render the traditional development pattern that we know is time-tested, we know is productive, they render it de facto illegal. When you have a situation where you were required by law to devote more land in many cases to parking than to actual square footage of your building, of your small business. What we see time and again is historic buildings, vital local businesses, literally demolished, bought up and demolished in order to provide parking. We see this denuding, this thinning out of the development pattern of the source of a community's wealth. You cannot reproduce or extend the development pattern that powers the financial productivity of our communities with the mandatory parking minimums that are in place almost everywhere. At a time when Minnesota communities are under financial stress, at a time when hundreds of municipalities are reliant on transfers from the state and federal governments just to fund basic operations, we desperately need to free Minnesota communities from this burden. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Sam Rockwell, and after that, Ian Thomas. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Tell me how you'd like me to title you when I address you, and you may begin.
Thank you very much, Chair McQuaid and members. Sam is fine. My name is Sam Rockwell. I'm Executive Director of Move Minnesota Action, and I have previously served on the Minneapolis City Planning Commission, including 2 years as president, worked for a real estate advisory service, and I teach land use law at the Humphrey School. So I'm deep in it when it comes to zoning and real estate. SF 3572 is an important step in letting communities evolve and develop efficiently, affordably, sustainably, and without burdensome and unnecessary regulations. I did hear Senator Jasinski talking about local control. I think we should use a filter of having regulation when needed and not when needed. And here we have parking minimums as a solve for a market failure where there isn't a market failure. Real estate developers and business owners have every incentive to build the precise amount of parking necessary for a project. If they build too much parking, they'll be wasting money and square footage. And if they build too little, they will not be able to lease a space or retain tenants. And I've seen this in action, right? Before working at Move Minnesota Action, I worked for this real estate advisory entity, and we owned a number of commercial and residential properties, and we were planning for a substantial real estate redevelopment project. And the site of the project was along LRT lines and numerous local bus lines and express bus lines in the city of Minneapolis where there was no parking requirement. Even there, through exhaustive studies, we determined that significant parking would be needed. It's what the market told us would be necessary for a successful project, but we had the flexibility to think about district parking, to think about different kinds of parking solutions. Nothing in this bill prevents parking from being built, and nothing in the bill prevents jurisdictions from regulating on-street parking or public parking lots as they already do today. Instead, SF 3572 allows our communities to evolve in line with actual needs rather than outdated regulations.
Thank you so much. Nice timing.
Perfect time.
Yes. Next up, I believe Ian Thomas, and are you virtual?
Yes, I'm virtual. Can you hear me?
We can. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Tell me how you'd like me to title you. You may begin.
Great, thank you. My name's Ian Thomas. You can call me Ian, and I'm the State and Local Program Director with America Walks. We're a national education and advocacy organization focused on creating safe, healthy, equitable, sustainable, and walkable communities. And the opinions I'm expressing today in support of SF 3572 represent the official positions of America Walks. From 2013 until 2022, I served on the Columbia, Missouri City Council. As a 3-term elected policymaker, I'm very familiar with the concept of local control. But deciding how many parking spaces are needed for a particular building is an area where cities don't need to have local control. In fact, parking mandates are actually harmful to cities. It's far better to let the market decide. The home builder knows how many spaces are needed for his apartment building. The local food entrepreneur can make that judgment for her new restaurant. Let's not burden local businesses with expensive and excessive requirements. Even on the busiest shopping day of the year, there are huge numbers of empty parking spaces at most stores and restaurants. Problems created by overbuilding parking to satisfy outdated mandates are visible everywhere. The affordable housing crisis, challenges for locally owned small businesses, sprawling suburbs with vast areas of decaying concrete, increased vehicle miles traveled and climate emissions, growing infrastructure costs as roads and sewer pipes have to service many miles for just a few residents, and a drastic loss of tax base per acre. Minnesota cities want to attract population, and a key demographic group which values car-light living is the baby boomers, like myself. In 2021, AARP published an article titled Prioritizing Housing Over Parking, which championed parking reform legislation in Cutler Bay, Florida. Vice Mayor Sue Ellen Loisel was quoted as saying, "Many seniors have one car which they share and some use public transit, so there's no need for every apartment to have 2 parking spaces." This is a perfect example of a situation in which letting the market decide will produce the best results for everyone.
Thank you so
very
much. Thank you so much. All right, we have Dave King, and I believe last on the list is Nick Erickson. Nope, there's not. Oh, it's Zach is last on the list. Nick Erickson. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Tell me how you'd like me to title you. You may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm David King. You can call me David or Professor King. I'm here to support SF 3752. I'm currently a professor of urban planning at Arizona State University, but I grew up in Minneapolis, and I used to be a small business owner in Minneapolis. And that's where I got interested in parking to begin with. I owned a restaurant in the warehouse district of Minneapolis, and I had a friend who wanted to open a cafe in Uptown. And he was told that he was going to have to tear down the house next door to provide 6 parking spots so he could have a 12-seat cafe. And I thought that was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. I didn't know about this. And he ended up not being able to build that cafe. He didn't go into the business. I then decided, when I got out of the restaurant business, that I was going to study parking. And my instincts about why parking was so bad for cities and bad for the local economies were proved true. I found, and my research has been largely focused on this for the last 20 years. I want to reiterate that there's 4 points I want to make, but I really want to reiterate: eliminating parking requirements does not mean anybody will not build parking anymore. It just means they're going to build less. Entrepreneurs are going to figure out how to start charging for parking. There's going to be shared parking, district parking, things like that. Being against parking minimums is not being against driving. It is not being against cars. It is being against onerous land use regulations. The second point is that these parking requirements add an enormous cost to local businesses. Think about, we've heard earlier that parking spaces are tens of thousands of dollars each. If you open a 30-seat cafe and you have to spend $40,000 per parking space just to open it, you are not going to be able to afford that, especially in today's economy, with high interest rates, with high labor costs. It is making small businesses unaffordable. The third point, I want to reiterate the historic preservation and adaptive reuse, and I want to end with the idea that parking requirements are a relic of the economy of the middle of the last century. They are not a solution to the economy of this century. They are not a solution to the economic demands and issues that we face in the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor King. Next, we have Zach Udishtu. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Tell me how you'd like me to title you when I address you, and you may begin.
Hello to the committee. My name is Zach Udishtu. You can just call me Zach. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I believe Darby is passing out an article that I published, a commentary in the Minnesota Reformer, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. I'm the Housing Advocacy Coordinator at Sustain St. Paul. We champion low-carbon transportation, abundant housing, and sustainable land use. And I'm also here today to testify on behalf of our close partner, Neighbors for More Neighbors, who champions secure, abundant homes in Minnesota. So I'm testifying today to urge you to support this legislation. I believe this change will support more housing produced at lower costs while also avoiding the environmental and economic costs that come from requiring excess parking. I want to highlight particularly two charts in this commentary piece that you've received. You see them towards the end of the piece. These charts come from data in Minneapolis Planning Commission approvals over the past few years. In them, we can see the quantities of parking spots built per housing units in new buildings of Minneapolis, which entirely eliminated parking minimums in 2021. In the charts, you can definitely see a decline in parking spots being built, even some buildings with no parking at all. But just like many places in Minnesota, not every development in Minneapolis is going to be ready to build no parking or to even go very light on parking. In fact, some developers in Minneapolis, without being required to, have still built plenty of parking because it's what their customers demand. And that's the power of this bill. It's flexibility. It allows us to adjust the local needs on a project-by-project basis, as the developers do, instead of using the blunt instruments that we have in place today. The results of this will allow for more abundant housing options that can be produced at lower costs, and thereby rented and bought at lower costs. And as recent statewide polling shows, 58% of Minnesota voters think legislators should prioritize building more homes and bringing down housing costs, versus just 28% who want to prioritize city government's power over what can be built and where. So I urge you to support this legislation. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. And last, we have Nick Erickson. Please introduce yourself for the committee. Tell me how you'd like me to title you when I address you, and you may begin.
Good afternoon. Nick Erickson, Housing First Minnesota. Nick or Mr. Erickson, whatever you prefer, Madam Chair. Our members build the communities and places that we all call home. You know, I'd like this bill because it does one thing that's needed. It restores three missing pieces to our state's housing regulatory framework. That's affordability, property rights, and most importantly, common sense. Today, it costs more to build a new home here in Minnesota than anywhere else in the region. In fact, we're one of the costliest non-coastal states for new home construction. Mandating a premium upgrade option like an extra large garage as a base construction requirement will add $40,000 to a new home's price. It's $40,000. At today's rates, that's several $100s per month added to a person's mortgage, and that's if you can qualify, because adding $40,000 to the price of a new home in the state prices out 90,000 potential buyers. From my perspective, I look at it this way. My first home was a 678 square foot bungalow in Como Park. 80% of my home would fit into the minimum size garage that some communities require. Say minimum garage fits 80% of my first home. From a timing perspective, it's really quite appropriate to be bringing this up because just the other day, the state's building codes experts approved a new definition for a single-family dwelling, one that says a single-family dwelling is a home that may, not must, but may include a garage. As for HOAs, the unfortunate truth is that they become a vehicle to offload the maintenance of public infrastructure, and this is done so not by directly requiring them, but by requiring outlots or monuments built at the entrance of the community. These have to be cared for somehow. And I'll ask you, who is better equipped to manage shared infrastructure, whether it's plowing a trail or a stormwater pond? Is it City Hall or is it some HOA president who's probably just a neighbor? Housing First is supportive of communities and developers choosing to form an HOA when it makes sense. In fact, it's quite popular with our move-down buyers who seek maintenance-free living. But we don't think that they should be mandated as a pretext to development approval. We think that these decisions are left up to the buyer. And from a property rights standpoint, no one's more suited to make decisions over parking or HOAs than those who are paying for them every month. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Members, questions, discussion? Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to thank Senator Fateh for bringing the bill. Senator Rasmussen, thank you for your work. I never thought I'd agree with SEIU on anything. But great job on your presentation, by the way. You know, members, our cities have really, we got to remember counties and cities are creatures of the state, and to an extent, some of these creatures have gone a little bit beyond where I think they were originally intended, and the market will take care of this. And I don't subscribe to the green part, but if part of Minneapolis or some other place wants to, a developer wants to build green and people are going to live there, that's how it should work. Or if you're in a suburb or living in Mazeppa and you want to build, 500 parking spots and have people come in, that's how it should work. And the people investing the capital to build this stuff will put the capital where it's going to do the best job. And we have to trust that. And in this case, you two senators did a great job, I think, allowing for that to happen. So thank you for your work.
Senator Jasinski.
Madam Chair, thank you. And a lot of good testimony, and I've been in the middle. I've talked to Senator Rasmussen about this. I've had many, many discussions with Senator Draheim. I was a mayor for 8 years, City Council, Planning Commission. I've been on about every board and commission in the city of Faribault. I've actually been a real estate developer. I developed and built 40 apartment units. I've represented people for restaurants to retail to warehouse to you name the different things. And there is some frustration with parking requirements, and I totally get that. I want to thank Housing First. You guys are doing a great job. I understand we're trying to bring the cost of housing down so it's affordable. I totally understand that. But also, as you know, as a person who's been involved in local government, I do have to support local control. And I think there's certain instances where there should be items. And there's good players and there's bad players. So there's cities that are very difficult. I get that. But there's also cities like Otana that have worked with that because they understand the needs, they listen to the needs, and they draft ordinances and zoning that will allow for those needs that they need. But they also, in certain areas, want different requirements to get people to come to certain types of projects they want. So I like both, and again, I think there are some good actors or some bad actors in local governments that are making these huge requirements that are frustrating for people. But I really think that each city can look at this and develop their local ordinances that address the issues. And if they want a buildable or a walkable community and they have the light rail to support it, then they can draft an ordinance that will allow that. But a kind of a one-size-fits-all, I don't think does justice to what we're trying to do. I think each city should have that. They should have their local control if they want it, and see how things go. I think these planning commissions and city councils can adapt to what they see the needs are in the community. They can develop the certain ordinances that address these issues versus a one-size-fits-all. So again, I see both sides, and there was some great testimony. I also believe in the free market, and again, it was frustrating going through some of the things that I did on parking requirements because, again, each city does have something different. They're not a general rule. So, and those requirements can change over time. I mean, at one time, yes, maybe it was 2 vehicles, and these cities need to look at that and go back and say, okay, maybe it's 1.5 and do a calculation, or maybe it's just 1. But I think we need to allow our cities to do that so that they can, each one can do that. I go home a lot of times and they say, what is going on at the Capitol? What are you guys trying to do now? And I think a lot of times our local governments are probably better at it because they listen to the people. They're closer. They're in their day out, and they can do a good job as well. And again, each community in the state of Minnesota is different, and I think that's why we have our local governments to do that. So I'm going to support the local control, allowing these governments to do that. But I also understand we should put some cities on notice that, hey, you're not doing the right thing. You're being overburdensome. You're increasing the cost of housing by sprinklers, parking lots, building requirements, you name it. And that's what we have to do is put them on notice that, hey, you better start looking at this and let things go. So, again, thank you for bringing the bill, Senator Fateh. Thank you, Senator Rasmussen, for being involved with it. I really do have mixed feelings, but I really have to go back to my roots of local control. And, I did it for 33 years before I came here, so I need to support that. So thank you again. My comments.
Senator Barr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo Senator Jasinski's thoughts on this and Senator Drazkowski's. We, the state, created the cities and the counties, and we gave them the power to do these things. And as soon as they do something that might not be what we desire as state legislators, then we want to come in and slap their hand. Minimum requirements. Another one that Senator Fateh is working on, the Uber and Lyft situation in Minneapolis. I like to think that the people who live in those communities have elected people to represent their views. And if they want minimum parking requirements, they want certain requirements. I'm going to give you an example. It's an out-of-state example, but it dovetails into this nicely. I grew up in northern Illinois. There's a small town there, Galena, Illinois. Some of you may have heard of that, Grant's home. And they are very historic, and they take pride in having an 1850s feel in their home. The local Walmart came in and they wanted to build their quote-unquote typical Walmart. It had to look like everybody else's Walmart, and the city refused to let them do that. And they went around for almost 2 years before Walmart finally changed their facade to match the rest of their building. But that's the local people decided that this is what we want. We want to carry on this tradition. The same side is if they get too far out of whack, it's up to the voters to elect different city council people to bring them back, rein them back in. I don't think that's the role of the state government to tell the cities you've gone outside of your boundaries, or you escaped the pen, as it was put here. You got out of the corral, so to speak. It should be to the voters of that district to say, you went too far, you're costing us here, here, and here. We've lost this, we've lost this, we've lost this, because you're over-restrictive ordinances that you've put into place. I know my local city, this isn't parking, but they put in an over restriction on chickens. Well, we live in the country. Everybody has a minimum lot size of 2.5 acres, and they said you could have 6 chickens but no roosters. Well, 3 of the city council people got unelected this last time around because of stupid things like that. The local ordinances and the people didn't like it, and they changed their elected officials. And that's where I kind of come up with the conundrum. They've gotten out of control. We granted them the authority. The state granted the authority to the locals. And if they have gotten out of control, it's up to the people who live there to change their elected officials. So with that, just a comment.
Senator Curran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not sure how much more can be said, except for it appears to be some bipartisan divide. You know me, we've worked for a long time to try and reduce the cost of housing. I'm for property rights, but the full-out ban, I think we could find some ways to ease into it, right? Minneapolis already eliminated them, right? Good for them. I don't see those areas related to parking being a huge issue in my entire district. I do share, I think I mentioned to somebody that on the single-family housing, the whole huge issue as well about affordability, dictating the number of garages, the facades, and all of those things. But when we look at this being if it has any impact at all on lowering affordability, I think it'd be completely negated by the rest of the legislative agenda that's been put forth last year and this year. Our Department of DALI, Labor and Industry, has been weaponized like we've never seen it before. You look at the contractor misclassification, right? Attacking them for the 2nd year in a row, adding great burdens to every one of our contractors that builds all of our great infrastructure. You look at the building codes, right? We got to cram them down there if we're going to have the most energy efficient houses that no one can afford. Those are the things that appear to be the most drastic and egregious policies that are driving all of it, and those are getting exponentially worse in Minnesota. We look at the landlord-tenant rights and the tenant bills that we've seen. Those are going to exponentially increase the costs and reduce availability as well. So to me, I think there's a better nuance opportunity for, I like the HOA piece. I think I've seen the weaponization of that, and I've seen it with personal experience with one of my kids. New revenue opportunity for them to build houses and keep a hook into them, and the cities to offload operational costs and maintenance onto them. But I think we get some more nuance that could be done to deal with those issues where the greatest challenge is. And unfortunately, I don't see it being a blanket removal of the property or the parking restrictions or parking mandates for our municipality. So I think we got bipartisan challenges here. I think we'll continue to move forward and do everything we can to try and lower those costs. But the rest of the agenda far outweighs any benefit that could be achieved by it.
I'm going to just real quick, Senator Jasinski, and then I'll come back to you. I really love your bill, and I'm really glad that you're doing this work. I think whenever you see an eclectic coalition, you found a really, really good issue. My first apartment was smaller than most parking spaces. You could have not parked a car anywhere in any of the apartments in my first apartment building, and we had to have 2 parking spaces. We didn't have enough money to even have a car, and it was, and that was, you know, that's just but one example. And so I think really allowing builders who are building a thing for a thing to decide how much parking they might need is part of their business plan. And so I think it's like hyper-local control, right? It's the person who's building the thing, and I really appreciate all of the perspectives that got this unique coalition to where it is, because it's kind of pulling all the things for me. So I really appreciate all the work that you all have done to get to this place, and at the risk of ire from my cities, I really like your bill. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to try and sway Senator Drazkowski here, and that's tough to do because he's very difficult to do that. But obviously someone here did today, so I'm going to give it my shot. So one last thing. So again, being involved in the city of Faribault for many, many years, we have a historic downtown. And over time, obviously, those things change. But what is on the main street is you have a lot of commercial buildings, and you have retail on the first level. And previous and on second, third, and fourth levels, either you had housing or you had office space. Many times it was office space or storage for the retail. So what's happened over time, and we spent many hours in the Planning Commission City Council talking about parking. So what's happening now is we're allowing some residential uses in the upper floors. We're trying to incentivize people to come downtown, live downtown, be a walkable community. But what happens is if you're not doing parking requirements, what happens is the people that live in the units park on the street down in front of the commercial spaces. Now, if I want to go down and buy a pair of shoes and I can't get a parking stall because all the residential people are parked in front of my store, it's difficult. So what happens is the city listens and listens over time, and there's complaints about parking, and we get complaints about parking, and there's not enough parking downtown. The business owner upset there's not enough parking downtown. So what happens then is the city has to go out and acquire parking lots, tear down buildings, build public parking lots to provide parking so that the businesses can have spots to park. Well, who's paying for that? That's the taxpayers are now paying for the parking stalls downtown because the city has to buy them. So again, if you want to provide your businesses and things like that, or if you have an apartment developer that wants to do that, they should be providing the parking to do that, so you're not requiring the city to then tax that to the citizens. So there's definitely two sides of that, but you do have to think about a community like that, where if you're going to have this elimination of parking requirements and then you don't have any retail stores downtown anymore, you're going to lose your small town downtown feel, because it's not going to be business anymore, because they're not going to have parking for their customers to come up and buy something. So another thought, I might not have done it. He's smiling, so maybe I haven't yet, but it's always fun. So thank you.
As long as you were the person between us and adjournment and not me. Senator Fateh, would you have any closing remarks?
Yeah, thank you so much to the committee, and thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to say thank you to the coalition that came together to make this to support this legislation. I want to thank Senator Rasmussen also for coming and being here this whole time. It's been a long committee hearing, so I appreciate his patience as well. So thank you all.
Thank you. Senate File 3572 is laid over. And with that, Senator Drazkowski.
I'm just, as I see these bills go through today, Madam Chair, and some of them I like the last one, but our deadline was 2 weeks ago. How are these bills meeting the deadline?
Senator Drazkowski, I think some of them don't. I think the ones that there will be taken action on, I think they would go to rules, and they would determine whether they meet that deadline, or if the reason they didn't is good enough, and move them from there.
It was interesting. I was in the Rules Committee 2 weeks ago, and I'm trying to remember the absolute numbers, but at that point we were about 3 or 4 times higher than the highest record of exemptions and rules for bills than we've ever been. And that was for the whole session. And that was at that point in time in this session. So I don't know what's going on here, but it's the management's not performant. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Drazkowski. And I actually just learned that the bills we moved were already exempted. So they probably already traveled through rules to get here, Senator Curran.
Quick question. Do we have any idea when the omnibus bill, the state gov policy finance omnibus bill, will be ready?
I'm going to turn to Chair Dietzick.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Sorry I'm not there with you today, but we are having conversations with leadership. We have had some scheduling challenges the last few weeks, and so that has held us up. But we are talking to leadership about working on an omnibus bill
and the status of some of these bills. Some of them that we did here today are moving in other places, but because they have rulemaking authority and stuff like that, we needed to also hear them in this committee as well. So we are in the process of working on that and hope to get it done ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dudzik. Okay, members, with that, we are adjourned. Are you?